Beneath our feet lies a world forgotten, a world carved in stone, buried in silence, and veiled by time. Every so often, the earth exhales, and what it reveals shatters everything we thought we knew. An ancient city without a name, a skeleton that doesn't fit our timeline, a tool too advanced for the hands that should have wielded it. Who were these people? What did they know? And why does so much of their story seem deliberately hidden? For every temple unearthed, 100 questions rise from the dust. Were these merely primitive builders or custodians of lost knowledge? The answers lie in fragments, etched into tablets, locked beneath ruins, scattered across deserts and jungles. But these aren't just artifacts. They are messages, clues from the past, daring us to listen. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more of what you love. Also, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far this community reaches. Thanks for being here. Now, let's jump back in. High on the windswept plains of Bolivia, where the Andes reach toward the heavens and the sky seems to stretch forever, lies a place that defies simple explanation. Here, amid the cracked earth and the thin mountain air, the ruins of Pumapunku sit in silent defiance of time. Sun-bleached stones, some weighing over 100 tons, lie scattered across the landscape like the remnants of a forgotten puzzle. These aren't ordinary ruins. They speak of precision, of purpose, of a mastery of stone that should not have been possible more than 1,000 years ago. Pumapunku is part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, an ancient ceremonial site believed to have flourished around 500 to 1000 AD. Yet, the ruins of Pumapunku stand apart, not only in design, but in mystery. At first glance, the blocks appear randomly toppled by time. But look closer, and a different picture emerges, one of engineering sophistication rarely seen in pre-Columbian South America. Massive stones are carved with perfectly flat surfaces, precise right angles, and drill-like boreholes. Some interlock with each other in complex three-dimensional shapes, as though they were once part of a greater mechanical structure. The question is simple: how? The Tiwanaku people had no known writing system, no wheeled transport, no metal tools capable of cutting stone with such precision. And yet, the granite and diorite used at Pumapunku are among the hardest materials on Earth, harder than iron. According to mainstream archaeology, these people relied on stone hammers and rudimentary tools, often working by abrasion. But that explanation struggles to account for the symmetry, the polish, and the near machine-like consistency found in many of the blocks. Some cuts appear so sharp, so exact, that even modern engineers have paused in admiration. Could it be that we've underestimated the Tiwanaku? That a deeper layer of their knowledge has been lost to time? Or was Pumapunku the work of a culture even older, perhaps long vanished by the time the Tiwanaku arrived? The most iconic features of the site are the H-shaped blocks, dozens of them, each identical in design, aligned with incredible precision. Some archaeologists believe these were part of a large platform, possibly even an ancient gateway. Others have theorized they were structural joints for a roof or wall system, modular, mathematical, deliberate. What is certain is that their construction required advanced planning and a deep understanding of geometry. And yet, no blueprints remain, no instructions, no evidence of how the stones were moved, lifted, or set into place. Some weigh as much as 130 tons. The quarry from which these stones were likely sourced lies over 50 kilometers away, across rough terrain and high-altitude valleys. How were they transported? Rolled on logs, floated on rafts, hauled by massive teams of laborers? Every theory seems to fall short, when faced with the sheer scale and precision of the work. This is where the mystery begins to shift from the historical to the speculative. Some propose that Puma Punku may be a remnant of a much older civilization, one that existed before the Tiwanaku, before even recorded Andean history. A civilization with technologies or techniques now completely forgotten. Others go further still, suggesting influences from distant travelers, lost continents, or even off-world origins. While such theories often stray beyond the evidence, they speak to the profound enigma at the heart of Puma Punku. The stones challenge what we think we know about ancient capabilities, about what is possible without industrial tools, about the fragility of history itself. There are those who look at Puma Punku and see only ruins, collapsed temples, broken ceremonial grounds, but others see a code, a message carved in stone, one we've only begun to decipher. Could the layout of the site conceal astronomical alignments? Could the proportions of the blocks reflect lost mathematical knowledge? And why was the site so abruptly abandoned? Was it the result of conquest, climate, a sudden collapse of social order? Or was there something more, an event lost to time, buried in the silence of the Andes? Even as archaeologists continue to study the site, the most basic questions remain unanswered. Who built Puma Punku? How did they shape its impossible stones? And why does it feel so deliberately unfinished, like a blueprint partially revealed, a vision never completed? Today, the stones rest beneath the open sky, worn by wind, kissed by frost, untouched by explanation. Visitors walk among them with reverence, sometimes with disbelief. They run their hands across the smooth faces of the megaliths, trace the sharp corners, peer into the mysterious slots and grooves. And perhaps that's the enduring power of Puma Punku. Not just what it shows us, but what it withholds. Because if these stones truly defy the tools we've assigned to their makers, if their precision transcends the capabilities we thought ancient people possessed, then what else might we be missing? What other pieces of history lie buried, not by accident, but by design? Puma Punku remains, and it waits, its stones whispering to the wind, its secrets still locked in place, unyielding, unanswered, unfinished. As we leave behind the stone enigmas of Puma Punku, we journey across time and continent, trading the windswept plains of the Andes for the golden sands of ancient Egypt. Here, beneath the blazing sun, and within the shadows of monumental temples, the tombs of pharaohs whisper stories long buried. Among them, none is more captivating than that of the boy king, Tutankhamun. His resting place, discovered in 1922 in the Valley of the Kings, was a treasure trove of wonders, chariots, statues, golden masks. But tucked quietly among these riches was a single object far smaller, yet perhaps far stranger. A dagger, simple in shape, elegant in craftsmanship, resting beside the young pharaoh's mummified body. At first glance, it seemed just another funerary item, a royal symbol placed for the afterlife. But this blade would go on to spark decades of debate, analysis, and speculation. Because Tutankhamun's dagger was not made of earthly metal. It was made of something that fell from the sky. Unlike the majority of tools and weapons from ancient Egypt, crafted from copper, bronze, or gold, this blade bore none of the usual corrosion. It resisted decay. Its surface shimmered subtly in the light. When scientists finally analyzed its composition, they were stunned to find high levels of nickel and cobalt, an unmistakable signature of meteoritic iron. This wasn't just iron pulled from the earth. It came from a meteorite. The dagger was literally forged from the remnants of a fallen star. But how could ancient Egyptians, in the 14th century BC, have known this? And how could they have worked a metal as rare and unforgiving as meteorite iron, which requires intense heat and skill to shape, centuries before the advent of iron smelting? For decades, archaeologists puzzled over this anomaly. The ancient Egyptians referred to a material in their texts called iron from the sky, a poetic phrase many assumed to be metaphor. But Tutankhamun's dagger gives that phrase a chilling literalness. It suggests that the Egyptians not only recognized meteorites, but valued them, revered them, perhaps even believed they were gifts from the gods. Consider the symbolism: a weapon forged from the heavens, placed in the hands of a king destined to rule in the afterlife. Was the dagger purely ceremonial, or was it more than that? Did it represent divine power, a connection to something greater, something cosmic? And if this single dagger survived the ravages of time, how many others were lost to decay? How many star-forged artifacts might once have existed, long melted down, repurposed, or buried beyond reach? Mainstream Egyptology accepts that meteoritic iron was occasionally used in the ancient world. But the skill required to work, it was immense. It's brittle, difficult to mold. To produce a blade so finely made, so balanced, and yet so durable, speaks to a level of craftsmanship that should not have existed in that time, or at least not to such precision. Some researchers have suggested that the dagger may have been a diplomatic gift, perhaps from Mitanni or the Hittites, cultures with their own knowledge of metallurgy. Others argue it must have been made by local artisans with knowledge now lost. Either way, its presence in the tomb of Tutankhamun, so young, so suddenly deceased, adds a layer of mystery. Why this weapon? Why this material? And where exactly did the iron come from? In 2016, researchers traced its probable origin to a specific meteorite, the Karga meteorite, found near the Red Sea. Its composition matches the blade almost exactly. If true, that means the Egyptians not only collected meteorites, but possibly tracked their impact sites. Did they witness them falling? Did they search the deserts for them? What stories did they tell of these sky stones, blazing across the heavens and crashing into the earth? In ancient Egypt, the boundary between the earthly and the divine was thin. The cosmos was not a cold vacuum, but a realm of gods, spirits, and eternal cycles. Could it be that objects from the stars, rare, mysterious, seemingly indestructible, were seen as fragments of that divine realm? And if so, how many other sacred items might have celestial origins we've overlooked? Today, Tutankhamun's meteorite dagger is locked safely behind glass, admired by millions, but understood by few. It sits in the Egyptian Museum, not just as a relic of a long-dead king, but as a silent challenge to our assumptions. A reminder that ancient people may have had eyes not just on the Nile, but on the stars. Was the dagger simply a symbol of royal prestige? Or was it something more? A key to a forgotten understanding of the heavens? Did the ancients know more than we think? Or are we only now beginning to ask the right questions? Because in that blade lies something extraordinary. Not just iron, but mystery. Not just craftsmanship, but vision. And in that silence, resting in a glass case, it still asks us to look up, to wonder, to remember that sometimes the answers we seek come from above. As we move from the golden relics of a boy pharaoh to the silent stones of Anatolia, the mystery shifts, this time beneath our feet. In the heart of central Turkey, beneath the sun-drenched plateaus of Cappadocia, lies a place unlike any other. A land shaped by wind and volcanoes, where soft volcanic rock gives rise to twisting valleys, conical hills, and strange fairy tale chimneys. But the most astonishing structures here are not above ground. They are hidden far below, in darkness and silence. It began, so the story goes, with a simple renovation. In 1963, a man in the small town of Derinkuyu knocked down a wall in his basement, expecting nothing more than another layer of stone. Instead, he discovered a narrow passageway. a dark, descending corridor that seemed to lead nowhere or everywhere. What he had stumbled upon was the first chamber of one of the most baffling archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. A sprawling, multi-level underground city. A vast, ancient complex buried in total secrecy beneath an unsuspecting town. And this was no mere cave. What lay beneath was a marvel of engineering. Halls, tunnels, wells, storage rooms, stables, chapels, and entire ventilation systems. A self-sufficient city, carved into rock. Derinkuyu. Over time, archaeologists uncovered 18 levels, stretching more than 280 feet into the earth. While not all levels are accessible, the scale of the complex is staggering. It's estimated to have housed between 20,000 and 30,000 people at its peak, along with their livestock and food supplies. Carved into soft volcanic tuff, the rooms connect through a labyrinth of passageways, some barely wide enough for a single person. Entire areas were sealed off with massive rolling stone doors, designed to be operated from the inside only. Who built this underground world, and why? Mainstream archaeology attributes Derinkuyu's construction to the Phrygians or early Christians fleeing Roman persecution. Later, it may have been expanded by Byzantines as a refuge during Arab raids. But there are problems with this timeline. The complexity of the design, the sheer scale of the excavation, and the precision of the architecture hint at origins far older. Some researchers suggest the initial phases could date as far back as 2000 BC or earlier. If so, that means Derinkuyu has been standing beneath Cappadocia for nearly 4,000 years, without collapsing, without being forgotten, until now. And it raises an unsettling thought. What kind of threat would drive an entire population underground? What force would make humans abandon the open world and instead live like ghosts beneath the surface? Was it war, climate collapse, a volcanic winter? Some say Derinkuyu was a place of sanctuary, built to escape the reach of hostile invaders. Others suggest it may have shielded people from something more environmental, perhaps a prolonged natural disaster, or even celestial events remembered in ancient myth. The design supports the idea of long-term habitation. Freshwater wells were dug deep enough to remain untouched by surface contamination or siege. Ventilation shafts bring air down from above, many still functioning today. Storage rooms show traces of grain and olive oil. Wine presses and kitchens suggest domestic life flourished here, even in darkness. There were even schoolrooms and churches. But then there are the more puzzling details. The tunnels are deliberately narrow, forcing any intruder to approach single file. Some shafts spiral downward, steep and dizzying. In many areas, the stone doors are placed at strategic choke points, allowing defenders to seal off entire sections with a push. There is a military logic embedded in the layout, designed to repel, to survive. And yet, no historical record from the time mentions it. No inscription names its builders. No texts describe its use. It is as though the city was meant to be forgotten. Some have speculated more boldly that Derinkuyu may predate even the known civilizations of Anatolia. That it was part of a network of subterranean settlements across the region, possibly tens, even hundreds of them, connected by hidden corridors that stretch beneath Cappadocia like veins. Was there a time, long ago, when humanity looked to the underground not as refuge, but as home? Others have gone further still, pointing to tales of cataclysms, ancient wars, or lost cultures that built downward instead of upward. Fringe theories abound, from ancient technology to remnants of Atlantis-like civilizations. While evidence for such claims is lacking, the sheer mystery of Derinkuyu leaves space for wonder. And yet, for all our exploration, only a fraction of the city has been fully excavated. Much remains sealed, too unstable or too dangerous to uncover. Some chambers echo with air that hasn't moved in centuries. Some passages collapse into blackness. We don't know how deep it truly goes. What secrets lie behind the unopened stone doors? What histories still sleep in silence? Today, visitors can walk its upper levels, guided by electric light, peering into chambers that once held entire communities. But beneath those footsteps, deeper levels remain untouched, undisturbed, as if waiting. Derinkuyu doesn't shout its mystery, it hums it, in cool air, in hollow stone, in questions with no answers. Who carved this city into the earth? Why did they go underground? And what, if anything, were they hiding from? Maybe it was fear, maybe it was wisdom, or maybe, just maybe, it was something we've yet to understand. As we emerge from the cool shadowed depths of Derinkuyu, we surface not into sunlight, but into secrecy. Thousands of miles east, in the heart of China's vast Shanxi province, an enigma rises from the earth. But it does not call attention to itself. It does not shine like gold or whisper like buried ruins. Instead, it waits, half forgotten, half hidden, beneath a blanket of soil, trees, and silence. Amid the rolling hills near the ancient city of Xi'an lies a structure so large, so geometrically precise, that early Western observers once doubted it was real. A pyramid, not of Egypt, but of China. One so immense that when American aviators first spotted it in the 1940s, they reported it as being larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. A colossal monument shrouded not only in vegetation, but in official silence. This is the so-called White Pyramid of China. And if it exists as described, it would be one of the largest man-made structures in history. Yet, few have seen it. Fewer still have studied it. It appears only briefly in old grainy photographs, seen from a plane, then disappears again into rumor and secrecy. But this isn't just a matter of legend. China's Qinling region is home to dozens of ancient burial mounds, many known, some mapped, and a few closed to the public. The most famous among them is the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, surrounded by the terracotta army. That site alone remains largely unexcavated, partly out of reverence, partly out of concern for what might be damaged or discovered, if disturbed. So what of the White Pyramid? Some researchers suggest it is merely one of these imperial burial mounds, its sharp lines weathered over centuries into more natural slopes, now forested and largely obscured. Others believe the photos taken in the mid-20th century point to something different. A monument, not just tall, but geometrically perfect, constructed with mathematical precision, and unlike any other known Chinese tomb. If so, it would be an anomaly. A lone pyramid rising in a landscape of rounded hills. Why then is it so hard to access? Satellite images of the region show symmetrical structures scattered across the countryside, many unmarked. Some are acknowledged as ancient mausoleums. Others are labeled as agricultural land, despite their unmistakable form. Official sources remain quiet. Some areas are restricted. Roads are unmarked. Archaeological investigations are limited, if allowed at all. Is this merely a matter of preservation, or is something else being protected? Mainstream historians offer a plausible explanation. The Chinese pyramids, if they can be called that, are in fact burial sites of emperors from the Han, Tang, and earlier dynasties. Covered with earth and overgrown with trees, they were never intended to resemble the stone pyramids of Egypt or Mesoamerica. Their purpose was symbolic, connecting heaven and earth, providing a celestial resting place for rulers who claimed divine mandate. And yet, the White Pyramid continues to stir curiosity. The eyewitness accounts, rare but consistent, describe a structure of pale stone, smooth sides, and a flattened peak. Some speak of a height exceeding 300 meters, far surpassing even Egypt's greatest monuments. But these accounts are difficult to verify. No official survey confirms them. No public excavation explores them. The pyramid remains, as it always has, unspoken, unseen. Speculative theories abound. Some suggest the structure predates the known Chinese dynasties, perhaps built by a forgotten civilization, or one lost to time and imperial revision. Others link it to ancient legends of sky gods and visitors from the stars. Stories of sons of heaven who descended to earth bearing knowledge and tools. While these ideas stretch far beyond accepted archaeology, they reflect a deeper yearning. The desire to know why something so monumental could be built and then erased. Because even today, China's pyramids receive little attention on the world stage. Unlike their Egyptian or Mayan counterparts, they are not promoted for tourism, nor widely studied in international scholarship. Most remain unexcavated. Some are simply fenced off and left to the forest. And the White Pyramid, if it exists as described, is treated more like a shadow than a monument. What lies inside? What stories are sealed beneath that earth? Could it be a tomb, a temple, or something older than both? No one knows for sure. And perhaps that is the point. The White Pyramid of China stands, if it stands at all, as a testament to what we still do not understand. About history, about power, about the way civilizations choose what is remembered and what is not. Perhaps one day, the veil will lift. Perhaps archaeologists will be allowed to dig, to study, to measure, to compare. And perhaps we'll find that it is nothing more than a hill, an illusion created by wind, erosion, and imagination. But until then, it remains a mystery. A monument glimpsed from the clouds, a silence carved into the land, and a question buried beneath layers of earth, time, and secrecy. As the silent slopes of China's Forbidden Pyramid fade into the mist of speculation, we turn now toward the searing vastness of North Africa, to a place where the earth stretches so far and so empty, it feels like time itself has been swept away by wind and sand. The Sahara. But beneath its endless dunes and sun-baked plains, the desert may guard more than just desolation. Hidden within the world's largest hot desert lies a secret, one not marked by towering ruins or ancient bones, but by something stranger: patterns in the land, lines, shapes, and perhaps a map. From above, the Sahara is a canvas of golden monotony, but satellite imagery has begun to peel back that illusion. Beneath the rippling dunes and rocky basins, researchers and amateur historians have identified formations, circular depressions, buried riverbeds, and faint, angular outlines that seem too deliberate to be natural. What emerges is a faint but persistent suggestion that the desert was not always barren, that buried deep within it is the ghost of a lost world, perhaps even a forgotten civilization. One of the most compelling sites lies in Mauritania, an enormous circular feature known as the Richat structure, or more enigmatically, the Eye of the Sahara. Over 25 miles wide, this massive geological formation spirals outward in concentric rings of rock and sediment. At ground level, it's difficult to grasp, but from space, it appears unmistakable, a perfectly circular feature in the midst of nowhere. Geologists explain the Richat as a deeply eroded dome of uplifted rock created by natural processes. But alternative theories have long circulated. Some suggest that the Eye of the Sahara aligns suspiciously well with descriptions from Plato's dialogues of Atlantis, a ringed city encircled by water and land. Could it be that this structure, now dry and lifeless, was once a coastal hub before the Sahara became a desert? It's a tempting idea, but the mystery doesn't end there. In 2015, A group of independent researchers analyzing high-resolution satellite data claim to detect linear features, faint but geometric, underneath sections of the Sahara's surface. These weren't random cracks or ridges. They appeared organized, like foundations, roads, canals, traces of infrastructure beneath hundreds of feet of sand. Mainstream science has long accepted that the Sahara was once green, an area known as the Green Sahara, or African Humid Period, lasting between roughly 10,000 and 5,000 BC. During that time, the region supported lakes, rivers, forests, and even thriving communities of hunter-gatherers. Rock art in places like Tassili Najar and Gilf Kebir depict giraffes, elephants, and people dancing near rivers. Entire lake beds remain as evidence of ancient hydrological systems, now fossilized beneath sand. But what if there's more? What if the Sahara once held cities? Archaeological surveys in the desert are difficult. Shifting dunes bury what they once exposed. Sandstorms erase years of careful excavation in hours. And political instability in parts of the region makes research even more challenging. But scattered findings, megalithic stones, pottery shards, skeletal remains, suggest that large-scale human habitation did once exist, far beyond the oases we know today. Then, there are the maps. Several ancient cartographic records, including those by Ptolemy and early Islamic geographers, hint at settlements or river systems in regions now inhospitable. Could these accounts reflect knowledge of a now-buried landscape? And what of the speculative ideas? Some believe that beneath the Sahara lies not just evidence of past civilizations, but entire chapters of human history that never made it into textbooks. Lost knowledge, ruins built before the known empires of Egypt, Nubia, or Carthage, cultures that rose, thrived, and fell, swallowed whole by climate change and time. The desert is unforgiving. Sand is both a destroyer and a preserver. Beneath it, organic materials decay. But stone can endure. If vast networks or cities ever existed here, perhaps their outlines remain, like a memory etched into the skin of the earth. Today, advanced radar and ground-penetrating technologies are beginning to reveal what the naked eye cannot. Subsurface imaging has already identified paleochannels, ancient riverbeds that once nourished the land. But researchers believe this is only the beginning. The full story of the Sahara lies still buried, waiting for patience, precision, and perhaps a shift in what we think is possible. What secrets lie beneath these sands? Are we looking at natural formations distorted by the human imagination? Or are we glimpsing the remnants of a civilization erased by climate, forgotten by time? The map beneath the Sahara may not be drawn in ink. It may be a map of ruins, of roads, of something older than language, older than myth. And like all maps, it invites us to follow. To wonder not just what we've lost, but what we might yet rediscover. From the scorching sands of the Sahara, we move northward, into a land where the earth is damp, cold, and steeped in secrets. Here, in the low-lying wetlands of Denmark, the past is not buried beneath dunes or hidden behind stone. Instead, it lingers just beneath the peat, preserved in the silent stillness of a marsh. Tolland Marsh, a place of fog and shadow, where the air carries the scent of wet soil and decay. It was here, in 1950, that peat cutters unearthed a face, serene, peaceful, so perfectly preserved that they thought they had found a modern murder victim. But it was not a recent death. It was a man from over 2,000 years ago, the Tolland Man. His discovery shocked the world. His features, his skin, even the stubble on his chin, all preserved by the chemistry of the bog. But he was not alone. Over time, dozens of other so-called bog bodies have been found across northern Europe. Men, women, and children, many bearing signs of ritual execution. Their lives ended with violence, their bodies offered to the earth. Yet, among the discoveries at Tolland and other nearby sites, one category of find stands out as more enigmatic still: weapons. But not of bronze, not of iron, of crystal. Arrowheads and blades, delicate yet sharp, painstakingly carved not from metal, but from translucent quartz. Tools of war or ceremony that shimmer faintly with light. And the question arises, why would anyone in the Iron Age create weapons from crystal? In practical terms, crystal weapons are fragile. Quartz can fracture on impact. It takes immense effort to shape, flake, and polish. Compared to bronze or iron, it's inefficient. And yet, they appear. Not in high numbers, but often in burial contexts or ritual offerings, sometimes broken intentionally, sometimes arranged in patterns. Archaeologists note that these items likely held symbolic importance. In some cases, quartz tools were found alongside cremation remains or placed with the dead in peat-filled graves. In others, they were left at the bottom of bogs, where time forgets, but the earth remembers. Could it be that these crystal artifacts were never meant for battle? Quartz has long held meaning in human culture. It refracts light, sparkles under the sun, and is found in sacred contexts across the world. In ancient times, it was associated with purity, protection, and even communication with the divine. To place a crystal weapon in a bog may have meant more than an offering. It may have been a message. But what were these people saying? Some believed the bogs themselves were sacred, a threshold between worlds. Offering a blade of crystal could have been a way to reach the gods or appease them. Others suggest the weapons symbolized a renunciation of violence, the deliberate destruction of tools of power as part of a ritual, a spiritual disarmament. Then again, perhaps the crystal blades were never weapons at all. Their form mirrors tools of war, but their function may have been ceremonial, part of initiation rites, seasonal rituals, or sacrifices lost to oral tradition. A dagger not to kill, but to sanctify. An arrow not to hunt, but to pray. And still, the mystery deepens. In some cases, these crystal artifacts show remarkable craftsmanship. Uniform edges, flawless flaking, as though they were made by masters of a forgotten art. How are these techniques passed down? Why choose such a difficult medium when easier alternatives existed? And why are some of these items found in proximity to bodies, especially those who died under violent, ritualistic circumstances? The Tolland man himself bore no crystal, but the cultural context of his time, the early Iron Age of Northern Europe, was one steeped in symbolism, sacrifice, and silence. We know little of the spiritual world these people inhabited. No written texts remain, only tools, bones, and the dark memory of marshland rituals. Some researchers have speculated that the crystal weapons might have held a form of status, wielded not by warriors, but by spiritual leaders, shamans, seers, figures who mediated between the human and the divine. If true, these artifacts were more than weapons. They were instruments of ceremony, of story, of cosmic alignment. And still others have asked, could quartz have been believed to hold energy, memory, a connection to something beyond the visible? These ideas, though speculative, echo through time. Across the globe, cultures have attributed power to stone. From jade amulets in China to obsidian mirrors in Mesoamerica, from runestones in Scandinavia to the megaliths of Britain, ancient people spoke to the land and listened. In that light, the crystal blades of Tolland Marsh become something more than curiosities. They become voices. Voices without words, questions without answers, glimmers of a belief system we can barely reconstruct. Why were these weapons made from stone that shines, not metal that cuts. Were they tools of peace, of death, of remembrance? Or were they something else entirely, something we've forgotten how to see? The waters of the marsh preserve flesh and wood and bone, but they also preserve mystery, a silence deeper than language. And in that silence, the crystal still gleams, waiting, inviting us to wonder what it meant, and what it still might mean. From the bog-bound crystal blades of northern Europe, we now descend into the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, where stone pyramids pierce the sky, and echoes of a long-vanished civilization still ripple through the volcanic earth. Teotihuacan. Once one of the largest cities in the ancient world, it thrived in the highlands of central Mexico over 1,500 years ago. Long before the rise of the Aztecs, its broad avenues, colossal pyramids, and multi-story housing blocks spoke of a sophisticated urban culture, one that left no written language and no known rulers. What remains is a city built with intent, geometry, and quiet grandeur. Among its most imposing monuments is the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, also known as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. Flanked by stone fangs and the enigmatic faces of ancient gods, this stepped pyramid guards a secret not above, but far below its foundations. In 2003, after heavy rains caused the ground to collapse near the temple's base, archaeologists discovered a hidden tunnel, a passageway untouched for nearly 2 millennia. As excavations progressed, it became clear that this was no ordinary chamber. The tunnel stretched over 300 feet beneath the pyramid, leading toward what appeared to be a ceremonial complex deep underground. What they found within defied expectations. Dozens of statues, mysterious stone spheres coated in pyrite, traces of ancient pigments still clinging to the walls, and at the end of the corridor, a stunning and unsettling discovery. Liquid mercury. Pools of it. Glittering, toxic, and seemingly deliberate. Mercury does not occur naturally in liquid form underground. It must be mined, refined, and placed. That the people of Teotihuacan managed to gather and deposit such a hazardous substance, centuries before the modern era, is a feat that continues to baffle scientists. And more than that, it raises questions we still haven't answered. Why mercury? Some scholars believe it was symbolic. In Mesoamerican cosmology, water often served as a metaphor for the underworld, a gateway to other realms. Mercury, with its shimmering, flowing nature and reflective surface, may have been seen as a supernatural liquid, a mirror to the divine, a river to the gods. In this light, the tunnel may not have been a mere passage, but a symbolic descent into the underworld. The Mercury, its river, a medium through which priests or rulers communicated with deities or the dead, a sacred, dangerous threshold. And yet the presence of mercury here is not isolated. Across ancient Mesoamerica, cinnabar, the red ore from which mercury is derived, was used in burials, often painted over the faces of the dead. In royal tombs in places like Palenque and Monte Alban, mercury residue has been discovered, suggesting ritual importance. But the sheer quantity discovered at Teotihuacan surpasses all others. Here, the mercury wasn't just a funerary detail, it formed a landscape, a liquid world beneath stone. Could it have served a technological purpose? Some fringe theorists have speculated that mercury may have been used in ancient mechanisms, perhaps even in energy systems, or astronomical devices. While mainstream archaeology finds little support for such claims, the idea speaks to the technological mystery that Teotihuacan still presents. A city that planned its layout to mirror celestial alignments, that built structures with precise acoustics and intentional resonance. A city that seemed to view the earth and sky as part of a single, unified design. And who, exactly, created it? That, too, remains uncertain. When the Aztecs discovered the city centuries later, it was already in ruins. They gave it the name we use today, Teotihuacan, the place where the gods were born. They believed it to be the site of divine origin, a city not made by humans, but by gods. The original builders left behind no written records, no names, no conquests, only stone and silence. And now, Mercury. The discovery of the Mercury River beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent has opened new debates. Was this a tomb, a ritual chamber, a symbolic replica of the cosmos, or something else entirely, something we no longer have the cultural tools to fully understand? Even today, the excavation continues under strict safety protocols. Mercury is volatile, dangerous, its vapors toxic. And so, like the knowledge it may protect, it must be approached carefully, slowly, respectfully. What other secrets lie beneath this ancient city? What else waits behind layers of earth and stone, still untouched by time or hand? The people of Teotihuacan looked to the stars. They charted constellations. They built monuments that aligned with the solstice and the Pleiades. But they also looked inward, downward, into the earth, into mirrors that shimmered with deadly beauty. Perhaps they believed that the journey to the divine didn't begin in the heavens, but in the depths, in the tunnels beneath the pyramid, in the glow of liquid silver, in the stillness of Mercury. And so we ask, what kind of civilization creates rivers beneath a temple, not of water, but of metal? What did they hope to see reflected? And what truths might still lie hidden in the dark, shining silence below? As we linger beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, where rivers of liquid mercury shimmer in the darkness, the mystery only deepens. For that same subterranean tunnel, hidden beneath the ancient city of Teotihuacan, holds yet another wonder, something stranger still. A passage not only constructed with astonishing care, but deliberately designed to glitter. This tunnel, rediscovered in 2003 after a heavy rainstorm caused the ground to collapse near the temple's base, was sealed over 1,800 years ago. For centuries, it lay undisturbed, untouched by looters or the outside world. When archaeologist Sergio Gomez and his team first entered, they expected a narrow passage, perhaps another ritual corridor, or a drainage shaft. What they found was far more elaborate. The tunnel extended some 340 feet beneath the pyramid, carved with remarkable precision into the bedrock and clay. Descending in stages, it opened into chambers lined with carefully arranged stones and sealed walls. The deeper they went, the more surreal the space became. The walls of the tunnel glittered in the light, not with gold, but with something far more curious. Pyrite, mica, crushed hematite. A cosmic dusting of minerals embedded into the very architecture. Why would ancient builders line a dark sealed tunnel with shimmering stones? Why go to such lengths in a space no one was meant to see again? Some believe it was meant to replicate the night sky. In the flicker of torchlight, the pyrite glimmers like stars, casting an eerie celestial glow across the earthen corridor. It transforms the passage into an immersive experience. A journey not just underground, but through the cosmos. Was this tunnel a ritualistic path to the underworld? A symbolic descent into the creation mythologies of Teotihuacan? Or did it serve a more specific purpose, reserved only for the elite or the dead? What makes this discovery even more unusual is its engineering. The tunnel was not just dug, it was designed. A series of strategically placed chambers break up the corridor, each one seemingly prepared for offerings or ceremonies. Artifacts discovered inside include intricate figurines, obsidian knives, carved shells, jade beads, and sculptures of serpents. There were also traces of rubber balls, possible ritual objects linked to Mesoamerican ceremonial games. In the deepest part of the tunnel, Near what some believe to be a simulated cosmic womb, researchers found strange spheres, dozens of them. Ranging in size from a few inches to the size of a grapefruit, they were made from clay, carefully coated with gold-colored pyrite, perfectly round, hollow, positioned in clusters. No inscriptions accompany them. No texts explain their meaning. Their function is unknown. Were they ritual objects, symbolic offerings, celestial representations? Theories abound, but none satisfy completely. Then there's the issue of the tunnel's ceiling. At some point between 150 and 250 AD, the entire passage was deliberately closed off. The entrance was filled with rubble, the chambers sealed. It was not a collapse. It was an intentional burial. Someone, perhaps an entire priesthood, decided the tunnel had served its purpose. And whatever that purpose was, it had to be hidden from future generations. What kind of ritual ends with the burial of its temple's most sacred path? And what lay beyond the glittering chamber? Deep ground-penetrating scans have suggested the presence of additional voids, possibly more chambers, maybe even a royal tomb. But no definitive remains have been found. Not yet. And Teotihuacan continues to guard its secrets. The glittering tunnel adds a new dimension to our understanding of the ancient city. Teotihuacan was not only a place of rigid urban planning and immense pyramids, it was also a place of performance, of illusion, of sensory ritual. A city designed to mirror both earth and sky. Above ground, the Avenue of the Dead aligned perfectly with astronomical events. Below ground, this tunnel turned darkness into light, stone into stars. Some archaeologists suggest that the tunnel may have represented the mythical origin of the world, a place where creation began in darkness, deep beneath the earth, before rising toward the sun. The tunnel, in that case, would be a symbolic birth canal. The chambers, wombs, the shimmering stones, stars not in the heavens, but beneath our feet. And yet, others point to more enigmatic meanings. Could the tunnel have been a place of initiation? A secret path walked only by priests or rulers in times of transformation? Could the objects left behind, the jade, the obsidian, the spheres, be remnants of a ritual no longer practiced and no longer remembered? Or was this a message left in silence? Teotihuacan remains nameless. We do not know what the people who built it called themselves. Their language, their history, their leaders, all lost. And yet, they left behind a tunnel beneath a pyramid, carefully constructed, deliberately filled, lined with starlight. And so we ask, once more, who carved this glowing corridor beneath the earth? Why was it hidden so carefully? And what, if anything, still lies undiscovered in its final chambers? Perhaps the answer is not in the artifacts, or even the architecture, but in the silence itself. In what the glittering tunnel does not say. In what it refuses to reveal. And in the questions that still echo in the darkness, where light once danced on stone. As we leave behind the glittering tunnel beneath Teotihuacan, a subterranean path shaped by shimmering minerals and silent ritual, we arrive at yet another mystery hidden beneath the earth. This time, on a small Mediterranean island, where the sun bleaches limestone cliffs and the sea laps softly against ancient shores. Malta. Here, beneath the modern streets of Paula, lies a structure older than the pyramids of Egypt. Carved entirely by hand into solid rock, deep underground, it is one of the oldest known examples of subterranean architecture in the world. A temple, a sanctuary, a tomb. The Hal Saflieni Hypogem. Its name means simply underground. But what it contains has defied explanation for more than a century. A three-level labyrinth of chambers, altars, and passageways, all hewn from the earth over 5,000 years ago, around 4,000 to 2,500 BC. It is a place where darkness swallows light, where sound behaves like something alive, and where the boundary between the physical and the mystical grows thin. Among its many chambers, one stands apart, the Oracle Room. It's small, unassuming at first glance. A red ochre spiral decorates one of its walls, possibly a symbol of eternity or spiritual energy. But what gives this room its name and its enduring mystery is what happens when sound is made inside it. The Oracle Room resonates, not randomly, not subtly, but with an intensity that seems engineered. When a deep male voice chants or speaks a certain note, around 110 Hz, the entire chamber vibrates. The sound bounces from wall to wall, echoing in rhythmic pulses. Not just within the room, but throughout much of the hypogeum. Archaeologists and acoustics experts who have tested it report a distinct auditory effect. The voice doesn't just reverberate, it envelops, as if sound itself becomes a presence. Modern experiments suggest that this resonant frequency can influence the human brain. Studies on similar frequencies have shown they can affect mood, perception, and even alter states of consciousness. Was this effect known to the builders? Was it used deliberately, as a tool of ritual, of transformation, or communion with something beyond? Mainstream archaeology acknowledges the chamber's unique acoustics, but stops short of attributing intention. Perhaps the resonance was discovered accidentally, and then incorporated into ceremonial practice. Or perhaps it was a happy coincidence, an accidental marvel of architecture that ancient priests interpreted as divine. But there are signs that suggest otherwise. The Oracle Room's shape is curved, smoothed, designed to echo. The walls were carved with precision, remarkably so for a culture with no metal tools. Nearby, other chambers also display acoustic properties, though none as profound. The alignment of spaces, the curvature of ceilings, the density of the stone. These are not random features. They hint at intention. And this raises a deeper question. How much did the temple's builders know? The people who carved the hypogeum left no written language, no blueprints. Their culture is barely understood. And yet, they produced a space that rivals modern sound chambers in complexity. One that appears purpose-built to interact with the human voice. Some suggest the Oracle Room was a sacred space used for prophecy. A place where the voice of a priest, or perhaps an initiate, would be amplified into something greater. Something divine. The resonance would give the impression that the speaker was possessed, or that another entity was answering through them. Others speculate the hypogeum may have been a site of initiation, a liminal space where sensory deprivation and sound combine to guide individuals through transformative states. The darkness, the reverberations, the disorienting layout, all ingredients for a controlled journey of the mind. And still, more fringe theories propose that the acoustics were more than ceremonial, that they were part of a lost science, an understanding of sound as a force, not merely for worship, but for healing, manipulation, even levitation. While such claims extend far beyond the evidence, the mystery persists. How did these prehistoric people, with no known advanced tools, create a structure so precisely tuned to the human body? Then, there's the matter of the dead. Thousands of bones have been found within the hypogeum, carefully arranged, placed over centuries. Skulls in particular were sometimes stored separately. Some appear elongated, though whether naturally or intentionally remains debated. Were these the remains of high-status individuals, shamans, chosen ones? And did the resonance of the Oracle Room play a role in their final rites? The hypogeum is not just a tomb. It is a soundscape, a temple, a riddle carved into rock. Every step echoes with intention. Every wall seems to breathe. And in the Oracle Room, even silence feels heavy, as if waiting for a voice that no longer comes. Why was this resonance chamber built? Was it a gift from chance or a creation of purpose? Did it serve the living or the dead? Even now, access to the hypodrome is tightly restricted. Too many visitors once disrupted the delicate microclimate, threatening the preservation of its secrets. Today, only a few are allowed inside each day. The rest must imagine the experience, standing in the dark, speaking a single note, and feeling the earth respond. It is a hum, not of sound alone, but of memory, of presence, of something older than words, still echoing beneath the stone. As we leave the resonant echoes of the hypodrome in Malta, a temple where stone and sound seem to intertwine, we travel now to the lush volcanic highlands of West Java, Indonesia. Amidst dense forests and terraced hillsides lies a site that challenges not just our understanding of local history, but potentially the timeline of human civilization itself. Gunung Padang. At first glance, it appears as a simple hill, its slopes covered in grass and broken basalt columns. But step closer, and patterns begin to emerge. Stones are arranged with eerie regularity. Platforms rise one after another, leading to a flat summit once thought to be a megalithic site of local cultural significance. For generations, the Sundanese people considered it sacred, a place of spirits, a place of power. But recent investigations suggest that this hill might not be a hill at all. According to a growing body of archaeological and geophysical research, Gunung Padang could be a pyramid. Not one built with precise limestone blocks like those in Egypt, but a massive terraced structure formed by layers of worked stone and subterranean chambers. If the claims are true, it would be the largest, and potentially the oldest, pyramid ever discovered. Mainstream accounts have long dated the site's surface megaliths to around 500 BC. But in the past decade, new radiocarbon dating of soil and organic material from deeper within the structure has yielded staggering results, some suggesting human activity dating back to as early as 20,000 BC. Even conservative estimates propose layers from around 7,000 BC. Either way, far earlier than any known monumental architecture on Earth. Could Gunung Padang represent a civilization long forgotten? One capable of complex engineering deep into prehistory? Geophysical scans have revealed what appears to be an internal structure beneath the terraces. Cavities, chambers, walls, layers upon layers of stonework, descending tens of meters below the surface. Some of these layers are aligned to cardinal directions. Others contain anomalies in magnetic readings, suggesting they were not placed by nature. The deeper one looks, the stranger the signals become. And yet, the deeper one digs, literally and metaphorically, the more contested the site becomes. Many experts urge caution. They argue that the site's natural geology, particularly the columnar basalt formations, can easily be mistaken for man-made arrangements. That what appears to be a pyramid might simply be a modified natural hill, enhanced with ritual stones by later cultures. That the dating results may reflect ancient organic intrusion, not deliberate construction. But others are not so quick to dismiss. Indonesian geologist Dr. Danny Hilman Nuttawijaya has become one of the site's most prominent advocates, arguing that Gunung Padang is a multi-layered construction project, one that evolved over thousands of years, possibly built by a culture lost to the sea or buried by volcanic ash and time. He proposes that it may be the work of survivors from a forgotten epoch, the memory of which only lingers in myth. Indeed, across Southeast Asia, stories abound of floods, sinking lands, and ancient kingdoms swallowed by the ocean. Could Gunung Padang be a surviving remnant of one of these? And if so, what does that mean for the timeline of human civilization? If proven, it would mean organized societies capable of large-scale construction existed millennia before the rise of Mesopotamia or the Nile Valley. It would rewrite the origin story of civilization itself, not as a sudden emergence after the Ice Age, but as a legacy of a more ancient, more complex world. The summit of Gunung Padang is divided into several platforms, each bearing stone arrangements, altars, and aligned megaliths. Their positioning suggests astronomical knowledge, possibly tracking solstices or stellar alignments. Yet no writing, no tools, no bones have been recovered in definitive context. Just stone, shaped and placed with purpose, echoing a language we no longer speak. Were these the works of a priesthood, astronomers, builders preserving cosmic knowledge in basalt and earth? Or was Gunung Padang a site of renewal, used and reused by countless cultures across ages, each adding a layer to the mountain's long memory? What lies inside the sealed chambers? What secrets might still rest beneath the forest floor? Excavations at the site have stalled at times due to funding, environmental concerns, or scholarly disputes. Some believe politics and dogma are at play. Others call for patience, for rigorous study before rewriting history. And perhaps they're right. But still, the mystery endures. A hill that may be a pyramid, a temple older than civilization, a forgotten architecture whispering through stone. If the deeper layers of Gunung Padang are truly artificial, they challenge the very framework of archaeology. They ask us to reconsider what humans were capable of, and when. They ask us to look not just at the evidence, but at what we've chosen to forget. Could we have risen before, built before, fallen before? And if Gunung Padang holds those answers, why is it still so silent? Why do its stones speak only in riddles, buried beneath the roots of time? From the green highlands of Java and the cryptic terraces of Gunung Padang, we descend once more into the desert. Here, the landscape changes, becoming scorched, wind-carved, and unforgiving. But in the middle of this barren sandstone wilderness lies a city carved not from stone blocks, but directly from the living rock itself. Petra. Hidden in the arid mountains of southern Jordan, Petra was once a thriving metropolis of the Nabatean people, traders, engineers, and artisans who flourished more than 2,000 years ago. The city was forgotten by the West for centuries, swallowed by shifting sands and time, until it was rediscovered in the early 19th century. Today, it is one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world, its rose-red facades etched into memory by travelers, explorers, and myth. And none is more famous, more haunting, than the building known as Al-Khazne, the treasury. It appears suddenly at the end of a narrow gorge, the Saiq, a canyon that twists through towering sandstone cliffs, enclosing visitors in shadow, until just beyond the final bend, it emerges. A monumental facade, over 130 feet tall, carved with precision and grace into the sheer rock face. Corinthian columns rise toward the sky. Intricate friezes decorate its surface. At its center, a massive urn rests high above, as though guarding a secret lost to the centuries. But what was the treasury? And why does it feel so out of place, more Greco-Roman than Arabian, more temple than tomb? Traditionally, archaeologists classify it as a royal mausoleum, likely built in the 1st century BC. Its architectural style draws from Hellenistic influences, a testament to Petra's position as a cultural crossroads, where East and West, desert and empire, met in commerce and exchange. Yet the structure remains curiously empty. Its inner chamber is small, bare, its walls plain. No inscriptions mark its purpose. No sarcophagus has ever been found. No treasure either, despite centuries of speculation. And therein lies the enigma. The name treasury comes not from any confirmed function, but from legend. Local Bedouins once believed the urn at the top contained gold, possibly hidden there by bandits, or even pharaohs fleeing Moses across the desert. Bullet holes pockmark the urn to this day, where treasure hunters fired upon it, hoping to shatter its secrets. But no treasure was found, and the urn remains sealed. So what was the true purpose of this structure? Some researchers suggest it may have served as a ceremonial site rather than a tomb, perhaps a temple to deities now lost, or a political theater where kings performed sacred rites. Others note that the treasury aligns with celestial patterns. On the solstice, sunlight pours into the canyon and strikes the facade in a precise manner, as if marking a moment of spiritual or calendrical significance. Was the building designed to capture light in a ritual context? Was it part of a larger, unseen network of sacred geometry, hidden within Petra's design? Or is there something even more mysterious at play? Behind the treasury lies a series of tunnels and underground chambers, many still unexplored. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed voids beneath the facade, sparking renewed speculation. Are there hidden rooms below the monument? Could the true treasure of Al-Khazneh lie beneath, in a lower chamber yet to be excavated? And why did the Nabateans go to such extraordinary lengths to carve this facade? Not build it, but carve it, into a place so difficult to reach, concealed behind a narrow passage that offers no strategic advantage. The Nabateans were master hydraulic engineers, capable of channeling water across vast distances through carved channels and ceramic pipes. They controlled one of the harshest environments on Earth with ingenuity and foresight. Yet their written records are minimal. Much of what we know about them comes from the stones themselves, ornate, mysterious, silent. Some fringe theories have taken the mystery further, suggesting Petra and the treasury are much older than the official dates suggest, possibly repurposed by the Nabateans rather than constructed by them. Proponents point to the unusual weathering patterns on the sandstone and the lack of inscriptions directly linking the treasury to any known Nabatean king. While mainstream archaeologists remain cautious, the idea persists that Al-Khazneh may be a relic from an earlier age, a structure so sacred, so charged with meaning, that later civilizations chose to preserve it rather than claim it. And perhaps that's part of its power, because Al-Khazneh feels less like a tomb and more like a message. A statement carved into stone not to be seen, but to be remembered. Even now, its silent columns stand untouched by time. Its secrets remain locked in sandstone. Visitors gaze up in awe, stepping into a canyon of shadows and light, where history doesn't unfold. It reveals itself, one curve, one column, one unanswered question at a time. Who built the treasury? Why was it hidden so carefully? And what might still lie beneath, waiting for someone to look beyond the surface? In the stillness of Petra, where the wind whispers through rock and silence lingers in stone, the answers remain just out of reach. But the mystery endures. As we leave the carved majesty of Petra's treasury, its silent grandeur still etched into sandstone, we journey now into the green chaos of the jungle. A place where time is measured not in centuries, but in roots and rain. Where entire cities have slumbered beneath the canopy, untouched, unnoticed, and slowly reclaimed by the earth. This is the world of the ancient Maya, and only recently have we begun to see it clearly. For decades, archaeologists hacked their way through the jungles of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize, uncovering stone pyramids, ceremonial ball courts, and complex city grids, evidence of a once great civilization that stretched across Mesoamerica for nearly 3,000 years. The Maya, known for their calendars, hieroglyphic writing, and celestial calculations, built cities like Tikal, Calakmul, and Palenque, centers of trade, warfare, and religious ceremony. But for every city mapped, Many more were believed to lie hidden beneath the thick, impenetrable jungle. And the question lingered: how vast was the Maya world really? In 2018, that question was answered in part by a beam of light. LiDAR, short for light detection and ranging, is a remote sensing technology that uses lasers to scan the Earth's surface from aircraft. By stripping away the forest canopy digitally, LiDAR reveals the contours of the ground below with astonishing precision. Hills, rivers, terraces, and, most critically, structures. Man-made geometry, where the eye sees only trees. When researchers used LiDAR over northern Guatemala's Petén region, the results stunned even the most seasoned archaeologists. Overnight, the known scale of the Maya civilization expanded exponentially. What was revealed wasn't just a few new structures, but an entire network of cities, roadways, fortifications, and agricultural fields. More than 60,000 previously unknown structures, homes, palaces, canals, irrigation systems, emerged from the virtual landscape. Some of the complexes were densely urban, suggesting populations in the millions, far more than previously imagined. Massive causeways connected city to city, straight as an arrow, cutting through dense terrain that once seemed impassable. Defensive walls surrounded certain areas, suggesting periods of conflict. Water management systems, reservoirs, dams, and drainage channels spoke to an understanding of ecology and sustainability, long lost to time. And yet, all of this had been hidden, not by deception, but by nature. How could a civilization of this scale, this complexity, vanish so completely from view? Part of the answer lies in the materials. The Maya built with limestone, which weathers easily in tropical environments. They left few large-scale stone inscriptions compared to other ancient cultures. Their cities collapsed not in fire or conquest alone, but in silence, abandoned to the forest over centuries. But LiDAR peeled back the green veil. It showed that what we thought were isolated ceremonial centers were actually part of a massive, interconnected civilization. The Maya lowlands, once thought to be sparsely populated, may have been home to a sprawling urban society, far more advanced in scale and infrastructure than previously believed. And it raises unsettling questions. How did a civilization this vast fall? Was it environmental collapse, drought, internal strife, foreign invasion? Or was it something more complex, a convergence of failures in a system stretched too far? The LiDAR data hints at both grandeur and fragility. Grand plazas and sacred pyramids stand alongside evidence of deforestation and overuse of farmland. Roads run like veins through now empty regions. Entire districts, once teeming with life, are now ghost prints on the forest floor. And yet, many of the sites remain unexcavated. Some are nearly inaccessible. Others are protected by nature herself, buried beneath roots thicker than a man's arm, guarded by jaguars, humidity, and time. What lies beneath those stones? What texts, what artifacts, what voices from the past are still hidden beneath the jungle's breath? Some researchers have speculated that the Maya may have reached a level of societal complexity rivaling that of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, yet without the same architectural permanence. Others see evidence of societal experimentation, cities designed with radial symmetry, ceremonial centers that emphasized sound and sightlines, and astronomy woven into architecture. Could the Maya have possessed knowledge or cultural structures we've barely begun to understand? Even the rediscovered causeways, known as Sakbiob, or white roads, glow under LiDAR. They stretch for miles through dense jungle, some raised off the ground, others sunken and lined with stone. Were they purely functional? Or did they have symbolic meaning? Processional routes for kings, or pathways for the dead? And how many more lie waiting beneath forests unscanned? Only a fraction of the Maya world has been surveyed with LiDAR. The technology is expensive, and the jungle vast. But what has already been revealed changes everything. The Maya were not a collection of isolated city-states. They were a network, a civilization of remarkable complexity, agriculturally innovative, politically intricate, and spiritually profound. And yet, they vanished. Their cities swallowed by jungle, their stories fragmented, their people absorbed into history. But now, piece by piece, beam by beam, the earth is giving them back to us. And as we stand on the edge of what has been found, and what may yet be found, we must ask, what else lies hidden beneath the canopy? What truths are waiting in the silence of the forest floor? And how many more civilizations, like the Maya, have vanished from view? Not because they failed to leave a mark, but because we have not yet learned how to see it. With each scan, each pixel, each faint trace of stone revealed beneath green shadow, the past grows larger, and the mystery deeper. As we leave behind the overgrown ruins of Maya cities, newly unearthed by beams of light from the sky, we move now into a much darker landscape, one not illuminated by technology, but by the hushed breath of the earth itself. A place not built by stone, but shaped by water, peat, and time. Northern Europe's bogs, here where the land is neither solid nor liquid, where mist coils low across the reeds, and the air hangs heavy with decay, something ancient lingers. Not ruins, not monuments, but bodies, perfectly preserved in the cold, acidic embrace of the peat. They are known simply as the bog bodies. Scattered across the wetlands of Denmark, Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and the British Isles, these human remains are startling in their detail. Skin still intact, hair clinging to the scalp, fingernails, eyelashes, even the expressions on their faces frozen in a final moment that defies time. Some look peaceful, others do not. The most famous among them, Tollandman, Grauballeman, Lindoman, seem not just preserved, but suspended between worlds. Their skin darkened to leather, their features delicate, haunting, human. And yet, their deaths were not natural. Many show signs of violent ends: strangulation, bludgeoning, slit throats, bound limbs. They were not simply buried in the bogs. They were placed there, deliberately, with purpose. But what was that purpose? The prevailing theory among archaeologists is that these were ritual sacrifices, perhaps offerings to the gods or to the land itself. The bogs were seen as liminal spaces, thresholds between the living and the dead, between the human and the divine. In many ancient cultures, wetlands were revered and feared, places of transition, transformation. To give a life to the bog may have been to restore balance, appease nature, ensure a good harvest, or it may have been punishment. A way to remove someone not just from life, but from memory. But the truth is, we don't know. Each body tells a different story. Tollandman, discovered in Denmark in 1950, was so well preserved that his discoverers thought he was a recent murder victim. He wore a pointed cap and a noose still around his neck. No other wounds, no grave goods, just him, curled gently in the fetal position, as though asleep. Dated to around 400 BC. Grauballeman, found nearby, had his throat slit from ear to ear, his skin still glowing under museum lights. He died around the same time, his hands uncalloused, his stomach empty. His death, like so many others, silent, stark, final. Why were these individuals chosen? Were they volunteers, outcasts, priests? Were they kings being returned to the earth, or criminals being erased? Some scholars point to early Iron Age texts, Roman accounts of barbarian rituals, of druids and blood rites, of sacred groves and human sacrifice. But these writings were filtered through conquest, through fear and misunderstanding. The people who placed these bodies in the bogs left no written records of their intentions. Only the bodies remain. And the bogs whisper their own language. The conditions that preserved these remains, anaerobic, acidic, cold, also destroyed much of what surrounded them. No bones survive. The peat strips away hard tissue, leaving only soft flesh and organic traces. We get a glimpse of a person, but rarely the full context. Their world is gone. Their moment, locked. Some bodies were laid carefully in the peat, arranged with reverence. Others were tossed or pinned, suggesting something more violent. Some were naked. Others clothed in finely woven garments. Occasionally, their stomachs still hold the contents of their final meal. Grains, porridge, seeds, suggesting ritual feasting or symbolic abstinence. Were these bodies part of larger ceremonies, public acts witnessed by the community? Or were they secret sacrifices, performed under moonlight and hidden from collective memory? The mystery deepens when we consider their distribution. Bog bodies have been found across multiple regions, separated by time and language, but united by a common method. Always the bog. Always the same signs: rope, blade, bruising, burial. Was this a shared belief across cultures, or a set of isolated practices shaped by similar environments? And why did these rituals stop? By the late Iron Age, the tradition appears to fade. Burial customs shift. The bogs return to silence. Was it due to changing religious beliefs? The rise of new political structures? Or did the people simply forget what the bog once meant? Today, the bog bodies rest in museums, under glass in dim light, their skin soft with moisture, their presence impossible to ignore. They are not skeletal, they are not abstract. They are people. People who once breathed, walked, wept, sang. People who were taken, gently, violently, reverently, into the earth, and left there, to be found. But found by whom? And for what purpose? Perhaps that's the final question. These bodies were preserved by nature, but unearthed by us, pulled from the mud by chance or curiosity. And now we must decide, what are we seeing when we look into their faces? A sacrifice? A punishment? A ritual forgotten? Or simply a life, cut short, yet somehow eternal? The bogs do not answer. They do not explain. They whisper. And in that whisper, a question lingers, soft and cold. What else waits just beneath the surface? As we step carefully away from the silent peatlands of northern Europe, where the bog bodies lie in their eternal sleep, we travel southeast to the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, a land shaped by rivers and reeds, by clay tablets and ziggurats, a land many consider the birthplace of civilization. Here, where the Tigris and Euphrates once nourished great cities, the ancient Sumerians recorded their history, not in oral legend or crumbling parchment, but in cuneiform, pressed into wet clay, then hardened by time. And among those thousands of tablets, buried and forgotten for millennia, one document stands out, not just for its content, but for the extraordinary questions it raises. The Sumerian King List. On the surface, it reads like a straightforward record, an administrative chronology of rulers, their cities, and the length of their reigns. But dig deeper, and the strangeness begins. The list opens not with ordinary kings, but with mythic ones. Figures said to have ruled for impossibly long spans, thousands of years. One king is said to have reigned for 28,800 years, another for 36,000. In total, before a great flood swept over the land, 8 kings ruled for a combined 241,200 years. And then, the flood came. The tone of the list shifts. Reign lengths become more modest, measured in decades or centuries. cities rise and fall, wars begin, dynasties form. The myth gives way to something more recognizable, something historical. But that first section lingers. Why did the Sumerians record reigns lasting tens of thousands of years? Were these symbolic? Were they gods? Or is the list preserving something much older, something we've forgotten how to interpret? Mainstream scholars tend to view these early entries as mythical, reflections of divine kingship or symbolic numerology. Some suggest the numbers may represent lunar months, not solar years, which would dramatically reduce the lengths. Others propose they were simply poetic exaggerations intended to connect rulers with the divine. And yet, the king list is not structured like myth. It is presented with bureaucratic precision, organized, consistent, matter-of-fact. It names real cities: Eridu, Larsa, Uruk. Cities confirmed through archaeology. It flows seamlessly from the realm of the gods to the realm of human kings, with no clear dividing line. So, who were these early rulers? Some have looked to the parallels in other ancient texts. The Bible, for instance, describes the antediluvian patriarchs, figures like Methuselah, living for hundreds of years. In Indian traditions, yugas span tens of thousands of years. In Egypt, the Turin king list includes divine and semi-divine dynasties that ruled for millennia before the pharaohs. Is it coincidence that so many ancient cultures recall an age when rulers lived far longer and civilizations lasted eons? Or is there a pattern? Fringe theorists have proposed that the earliest Sumerian kings may not have been human at all, but beings from an earlier epoch, perhaps of a different nature or origin. Stories of the Anunnaki, divine beings who came from the heavens and shaped mankind, have fueled countless alternative theories. But the evidence remains elusive, more suggestion than proof. Still, the question remains: why did the Sumerians write this list the way they did? If it was purely symbolic, why the exact numbers? Why the precise succession of cities? Why anchor it with a global event, the flood, that appears across cultures? The flood itself, as referenced in the king list, is a turning point. The flood swept over the earth, it reads simply. No elaboration, no mythology, just a line. And yet, across the ancient world, from Mesopotamia to India, from Greece to the Americas, there are echoes of the same event. A deluge, a reset, a world washed clean. Did the Sumerians preserve a memory here? Not just of kings and cities, but of cycles of time, of ages lost beneath water and sand. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of severe flooding in the Mesopotamian basin, dating to around 2900 BC. It may not have been global, but it was catastrophic locally. Entire cities were affected. Could the king list be encoding history? Not in the way we define it, but in the way ancient peoples remembered it? Memory, after all, is not always linear. It's layered, compressed, transformed. Perhaps the reigns of 30,000 years weren't meant to be measured, but to be felt, to mark a time when the world was different, when gods walked with men, when time moved not by clocks or calendars, but by cycles, stars, and stories. And yet, one detail remains hard to explain. Why begin a formal, administrative record with such impossible claims, only to shift into known, verifiable rulers? Why not separate myth from history? Why merge the two into one document, written and rewritten over centuries? Unless the Sumerians didn't see them as separate at all. To them, the divine past was part of the historical present. The world of gods and kings overlapped, merged, echoed. And perhaps, in that view, the idea of a 36,000-year reign wasn't absurd. It was a truth of a different kind. So we're left with a mystery. One etched in clay, still legible after 5,000 years. A list that begins not with a question, but with a claim. After kingship had descended from heaven, what came before history as we know it? Who ruled in the time before time? And how many truths, buried in myth, wrapped in numbers, have we yet to decipher? The tablets are silent now, but they are not finished speaking. From the distant memories inscribed in clay, the Sumerian kings whose reigns stretched impossibly into the deep past, we turn now to something far more intimate, and yet no less enigmatic. A human face, painted, preserved, and placed with care. Not beneath stone or within a tomb, but balanced delicately on the back of a turtle shell. This is not the kind of artifact that announces itself with grandeur. It was discovered quietly in a remote burial site on the island of Jericho in the West Bank, where layers of soil hid one of the most perplexing finds of the Neolithic era. Among the remains of an early settlement, archaeologists unearthed a skull, human. But what made it remarkable was what had been done to it. The skull was not just buried, it had been altered. Its facial features were painted with red ochre, a mineral pigment long associated with ritual and burial practices. The paint outlined the eyes, the nose, the lips, a face remade after death. And beneath it, cradling the skull like a platform, was the curved shell of a turtle. This strange pairing of bone and shell, pigment and earth, was not isolated. In sites across the Levant, dating as far back as 8000 BC, archaeologists have found plastered and painted skulls, often separated from their original bodies. Some were buried beneath floors of homes, suggesting they may have served as ancestral relics, tokens of memory, protection, or worship. But the turtle shell adds a deeper layer of symbolism, one that scholars still struggle to interpret. Why rest a human skull atop a turtle shell? Was it an altar, a throne, a cradle for the spirit? The turtle is a powerful symbol across cultures. In some traditions, it represents the world itself, its back carrying the land and sky. In others, it signifies longevity, wisdom, the boundary between land and water, life and death. But in this context, Neolithic Jericho, we can only guess at what it meant to the people who placed it so deliberately beneath the soil. Perhaps the combination of skull and shell spoke of rebirth, the hard enclosing shell as a symbol of protection, incubation, of a soul passing through transformation. Or perhaps the turtle, a creature that retreats into itself and re-emerges, was seen as a metaphor for the dead, returning in some unseen form. The paint adds another dimension. Red ochre has been used in burials around the world for tens of thousands of years, across Africa, Europe, and Asia. It mimics the color of blood, of life, of flesh. To paint the face of the dead is to make them live again, or at least to remember them as they once were. But was this an act of mourning, a ritual of power, or something more personal, an attempt to preserve identity beyond decay? We do not know who this person was. No name accompanies the skull, no text, no grave goods beyond the shell. We do not know whether they were a leader, a shaman, or simply beloved. But the care taken suggests reverence and intent. Other skulls from the same era have been found with eyes recreated in shells or features sculpted from plaster. Some show signs of having been displayed, perhaps mounted in shrines or passed from generation to generation. A kind of ancestor cult, a communion with the dead not hidden in tombs, but kept close to the living. What kind of relationship did these ancient people have with death? Was the skull seen as a vessel of memory, of wisdom, of protection? Or was it something more mystical, a medium through which the dead could still speak? The presence of the turtle shell complicates any single interpretation. It is both natural and symbolic, functional and spiritual. Was the shell used to carry the skull in processions? Did it rest in a sacred place, a point of contact between worlds? Or was it simply a reflection of a story we no longer remember? And what might the pairing of human and turtle have meant in a world without writing? Here, we are left with symbols of bone, pigment, and shell. A face redrawn after death, a skull placed not in the ground, but upon another creature's back. A ritual act, or a message. Modern archaeologists have only begun to piece together the patterns. And while some suggest that such practices were part of a broader Neolithic tradition of ancestor veneration, others remain cautious. The meanings may be multiple, contextual, lost in the silence of the past. Today, the painted skull on a turtle shell rests in a museum, protected, studied, removed from the earth that once concealed it. But its mystery remains untouched. Why was it painted? Why was it separated from its body? Why, of all things, was it placed on a turtle? Perhaps it was an offering to the gods. Perhaps it was the embodiment of a myth. Or perhaps it was something simpler, more human. A final act of love, of remembrance, of awe. In the end, the face looks back at us, not with fear, not with pain, but with a calm that defies time. A face reborn, balanced on a shell, whispering something we still can't quite hear. From the painted skull and its silent resting place atop a turtle shell, we now lift our gaze to the horizon, across the vast emptiness of the Sahara, a landscape where wind sculpts sand into waves, and the sun scorches stone by day and chills the earth by night. But in this desolate expanse, where life seems impossible and silence reigns, stand patterns that speak of something ancient, something deliberate. Stone circles, scattered across the western and central Sahara, from the deserts of Mauritania to the far reaches of Niger and Algeria, are hundreds, possibly thousands, of stone formations. Some are simple rings made of rough blocks, barely visible above the sand. Others are more elaborate, standing stones aligned with the cardinal points, slabs balanced with uncanny precision, and spiral-like formations whose meaning remains locked in the past. Among the most enigmatic is the site of Tichet in southeastern Mauritania. Here, on the edge of an arid plateau, lie the remains of one of the oldest known settlements in West Africa. Once, thousands of years ago, this was not a desert. It was savanna, green, fertile, home to early herders and farmers who built stone compounds and left behind walls that still cling to the rocks today. And at its heart, stone circles. Conventional archaeology dates some of these structures to as early as 2000 BC, though some may be older. They were likely built by the ancestors of the Soninka people, precursors to the later Ghana Empire. But even this explanation leaves much unanswered. Why these circles? Why this shape? Were they dwellings, ceremonial enclosures, or something more symbolic? Some circles are surrounded by burial mounds. Others are found in clusters, connected by low stone walls, suggesting communal activity. Yet they seem to lack the tools of daily life. No extensive middens, no hearths. In some cases, the stones are too large and too carefully arranged for mere domestic use. Researchers have proposed they could have been markers, calendrical tools to track the solstices or equinoxes, much like Stonehenge or Nabta Playa in southern Egypt. Others suggest they served as sacred spaces, shrines to forgotten deities, or places where the dead and the living met. But if so, what rituals were performed here? And why so many circles spread across such an inhospitable landscape? One of the most striking features of these stone structures is their isolation. Many lie far from modern settlements, on high ground or in areas with no visible water source. Some are only accessible by days of travel across dunes. And yet, the stones remain, undisturbed, unmoved, still standing as they have for millennia. Who carried these stones? Who chose the locations? And what knowledge guided their placement? In some cases, the stones appear magnetically aligned. In others, they echo the constellations above, mirroring the stars, as though mapping the sky onto the earth. Whether by design or coincidence, the patterns invite speculation. Did these ancient builders possess a form of astronomy encoded into stone? Were these monuments part of a larger spiritual worldview, now erased by desert and time? The Sahara has not always been a wasteland. During the African humid period, this region was lush and green, dotted with lakes, rivers, and herds of game. It supported thriving communities, many of whom vanished as the rains withdrew and the sands advanced. Some may have migrated, others may have adapted. But the circles remained, rising like punctuation marks in a forgotten story. Their function, their makers, their timeline, all remain elusive. Few have been systematically excavated. Even fewer have been studied with modern tools like LiDAR or deep ground scanning. And perhaps that's part of their mystique. Unlike the grand monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, the stone circles of the Sahara whisper rather than shout. They do not dominate the landscape. They blend into it, disappear within it. They were not built to impress, but perhaps to endure. They hint at a civilization that organized itself, not with monumental ego, but with rhythm, alignment, and quiet reverence. A people who saw significance in repetition, in form, in the language of the land. And yet, as the centuries passed, the climate changed. The green turned to gold. The lakes dried. The wind grew sharper. And whatever stories the stones once told were buried. Today, they wait, silent, weathered, half lost to sand. What did the circles mean? Were they homes for the living, or thresholds for the dead? Did they mark the stars, the seasons, or something even more profound? A worldview, an unseen map, a memory. We may never fully know. But in a landscape stripped bare of noise, movement, or distraction, the stones still speak, not in words, but in presence, in placement, in mystery. And as we gaze across the Sahara's endless horizon, we're left with a single, quiet question. What ancient hands laid these stones, and what truth were they trying to leave behind? From the silent circles scattered across the Sahara, ancient stones aligned with sky and earth, we now shift towards something smaller, stranger. Not found in deserts or under deep jungle canopies, but unearthed in quiet fields and forgotten Roman outposts. Objects that defy categorization, that seem at once practical and ceremonial, ordinary and otherworldly. The Roman dodecahedrons, small hollow objects made of bronze with 12 pentagonal faces, each pierced by a circular hole, each with knobs at the corners. No two are exactly alike. Some are simple, others intricately crafted, ranging in size from a golf ball to a grapefruit. Their symmetry is unmistakable, their purpose still unknown. Over 100 of these dodecahedrons have been found across northern and western Europe, in regions once under Roman control: Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Hungary. And always in the same curious pattern. They appear far from the empire's political heartland, not in Rome or Athens or Alexandria, but on the frontier. But what were they for? No ancient Roman text mentions them. No inscription explains them. They are never found with documentation or diagrams. And yet, they continue to emerge from Roman-era layers, often alongside coins, pottery, and tools. Everyday objects of known use, found next to something inexplicable. Some have been discovered in military camps, others near temples, a few even in burial contexts. And while we know they were made during the Roman period, between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, we don't know why. Over the years, countless theories have surfaced. Some suggest the dodecahedrons were measuring devices used to calculate distance or size based on the differing diameters of the holes. Others propose they were surveying tools, aiding Roman engineers in laying out roads or aqueducts. But the lack of wear, the irregularity of hole sizes, and the absence of standardization weaken these ideas. Could they have been astronomical instruments used to track celestial events or alignments? The pentagonal geometry and hollow construction have led some to speculate about their role in marking equinoxes, solstices, or phases of the moon. But again, there's no solid evidence. More speculative suggestions abound. They were candle holders, thread spools for knitting gloves, gaming dice, religious artifacts, or status symbols. Some even believe they were divination tools, used in ritual practices we can no longer reconstruct. Objects passed between priest and seeker, the holes symbolizing gateways to unseen realms. One theory, gaining interest, posits that the dodecahedrons may have been part of a localized religious practice, a cult unknown to us, possibly confined to the northern provinces of the Roman Empire. Their placement in temples and graves suggests symbolic use. The knobbed corners, perhaps, were not decorative but meaningful, touch points for fingers or markers for orientation. Their emptiness may have been intentional, a form meant to suggest the absence of form. And then there's the question of why they disappear. After the 4th century, no new dodecahedrons appear. The practice, or the knowledge, vanishes, as if a ritual was abandoned, a craft forgotten, a need no longer felt. Why? Was it the spread of Christianity, replacing old traditions with new doctrine, a cultural shift, or something more subtle, a loss of local identity in the face of imperial change? In many ways, the dodecahedrons remind us how fragile knowledge can be. How even within a literate, expansive empire like Rome, a single artifact can escape explanation, survive the fall of empires, but not the memory of meaning. Modern reconstructions have tried to make sense of them. Some hobbyists have used replicas to project light through the holes, suggesting a role as optical devices. Others have 3D printed them, threading yarn or setting candles inside, hoping function will reveal itself through form. But the truth remains elusive. We're left with an object that defies classification. Too complex to be accidental, too consistent to be meaningless, and yet too mysterious to be understood. What kind of culture crafts such precise geometric forms and leaves no record of their use? What kind of empire forgets not only how an object worked, but why it was made at all? Perhaps the Roman dodecahedron wasn't designed for function, but for contemplation. Perhaps its mystery is its purpose, a puzzle offered to time, a question posed across centuries. Because when we hold one in our hands, cold, hollow, and silent, we're reminded of something ancient cultures knew well. That not all knowledge must be written. Some is encoded in shape, in space, in silence. And so we wonder, was the dodecahedron a tool, a symbol, a prayer? Or was it something else entirely, something we haven't yet learned to see? Its 12 faces reflect not only light, but the limits of what we can know, and what still waits to be rediscovered in the shadows of the past. From the hollow geometries of the Roman dodecahedrons, objects that refuse to reveal their meaning, we now turn to something more familiar in form, but equally profound in mystery. A clay tablet. Cracked, weathered, inscribed with tiny wedge-shaped marks. An object so simple in appearance, and yet so extraordinary in what it contains. It was unearthed in ancient Mesopotamia, where the great cities of Babylon once rose beside the slow-moving waters of the Euphrates. A land of ziggurats and libraries, kings and scribes, a place where the sky was not just observed, but measured, mapped, and woven into the very fabric of everyday life. The Babylonian eclipse tablet, catalogued as BM33066 in the British Museum, is one of the clearest surviving records of how this ancient civilization tracked the heavens. It contains a list of solar and lunar eclipses, recorded with astonishing precision. Each entry marks not only the date of the event, but also its nature, direction, and duration. Some tablets even include political consequences or omens associated with the eclipse, a blending of science and spirituality that defined Babylonian thought. The most famous among these is the Saros Cycle tablet, which documents a series of 38 lunar eclipses that occurred over a period of 223 lunar months, just over 18 years. A cycle still used by astronomers today to predict the recurrence of eclipses. Somehow, over 2,500 years ago, Babylonian scholars had already discovered this pattern, without telescopes, without computers, without satellites. How? This question continues to puzzle historians of science. The Babylonians were careful observers. They maintained generations-long records of celestial events, each meticulously inscribed in cuneiform, often by temple scribes trained in both astrology and mathematics. But even so, the level of sophistication required to identify and track the Saros cycle is remarkable. Was it pure empirical observation, refined over centuries of sky-watching? Or did they possess a conceptual model of the cosmos more advanced than we have credited? Some scholars believe they used a kind of proto-trigonometry, geometric calculations inferred from planetary movement, to predict when eclipses would occur. Others suggest that the knowledge may have been inherited from even earlier cultures, then codified and expanded in Babylon's great scribal schools. And yet, beyond the technical brilliance lies something deeper. To the Babylonians, the eclipse was never merely a physical event. It was a sign, a message, a warning. Lunar eclipses were often seen as omens for kings, solar eclipses as portents of upheaval, disease, or war. The sky was not just a backdrop, it was an active voice in the affairs of men. In one tablet, an eclipse is followed by a record of famine. In another, a king dies. The connections may be coincidental, but the belief was firm. The heavens and the earth moved in harmony, and to ignore the signs was to court disaster. Here is where mystery deepens, because while many ancient cultures observed the skies, Egyptians with their star clocks, Mayans with their calendars, it is in Babylon that we see the first clear synthesis of astronomy and prediction. A form of science not rooted in material exploration, but in pattern and rhythm, in meaning. And one can't help but wonder, was it merely pattern recognition, or something more? Some researchers have noted that Babylonian astronomical texts sometimes describe the moon's behavior with remarkable abstraction, speaking not just of visible motion, but of ideal motion. They imagined the moon's path not just as it appeared, but as it should appear, in a perfect model. This suggests a leap beyond observation, a shift into conceptual, even theoretical thinking. Could it be that the Babylonians possessed not only cycles and charts, but early algorithms? Was their eclipse science more than just a record? Was it a kind of encoded sky mathematics? Modern studies of tablets like BM33066 suggest yes. The tablet doesn't just list events, it predicts them. It uses modular arithmetic, positional notation, and sophisticated timekeeping methods. Some texts even reveal corrections made by later scribes, indicating an ongoing refinement, a living body of knowledge. And yet, for all this brilliance, the full scope of their system remains obscured. Many tablets are broken, others untranslated. Some may still lie buried beneath the rocky soil, fragments of lost libraries waiting to be uncovered. So, what else did they know? What other cycles, what other patterns might be encoded in the tablets we have yet to read? And is it possible that even now, modern astronomy owes more to Babylon than we understand? The Babylonian eclipse tablet is more than an artifact. It is a doorway into a mind that saw the night sky not as a mystery, but as a map. A mind that tracked shadows across the moon and saw in them not chaos, but rhythm, law, warning, and perhaps understanding. We may never know the names of the scribes who etched these patterns into clay, but their voices survive, not in sound, but in orbit, in shadow, in the regular breath of the moon across the sun. And in that quiet alignment, we are left to wonder, what else did they leave for us, encoded in the sky, waiting to be seen again? From the clay tablets of Babylon that foretold eclipses with eerie precision, we now trace a path northward, into the heart of ancient Assyria. There, in the city of Nineveh, beneath layers of ash and ruin, archaeologists uncovered something that few dared to imagine: a lost royal library. Not of scrolls, but of tablets. Thousands of them, cracked, charred, and yet miraculously preserved. This is the library of Ashurbanipal, the oldest known library in the world. Hidden beneath what is now northern Iraq, the ruins of Nineveh stood silent for centuries, buried after the fall of the Assyrian Empire around 612 BC. When the invading Babylonians and Medes tore through the city, they set fire to the palaces, temples, and archives. Clay tablets, normally fragile, were baked by the flames. But in a strange twist of fate, the fire that destroyed the city preserved its knowledge. When British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard began excavating the site in the mid-19th century, he unearthed a staggering collection. Over 30,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments, all part of a royal archive curated under the reign of King Ashurbanipal, the last great ruler of Assyria. Ashurbanipal was no ordinary king. He called himself King of the World and King of the Four Quarters, but he was also a scholar. He could read Sumerian and Akkadian. He surrounded himself with scribes and scholars, and he commanded that the knowledge of his empire, and those that came before, be collected and preserved. And what was preserved is nothing short of extraordinary. Among the tablets are records of royal correspondence, astronomical calculations, legal decrees, medicine, ritual texts, myths, omens, dictionaries, and even spells. And then there is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known work of literature, found not in some dusty scroll room, but buried in the ash of Nineveh, etched into stone. The library of Ashurbanipal was more than an archive. It was a vault of memory, a repository of human thought. But it was also curated with intention. Texts were copied from older sources, some already ancient by the time they reached Nineveh. Others were translations, compiled from far-flung corners of the empire. A few were marked with curses, warning any future ruler not to tamper with or remove the knowledge within. And yet, for all its breadth, the library still guards secrets. Not all the tablets have been deciphered. Many remain fragmented. Some appear to reference other, older collections now lost to time, hinting at libraries within libraries, networks of knowledge that once stretched across Mesopotamia. Why did Ashurbanipal go to such lengths to preserve these writings? Was it purely political? An attempt to consolidate control through divine and intellectual authority? Or did he believe, like the Babylonians, that knowledge itself was a force, one that could shape fate, heal the body, and protect the state? Some scholars suggest the library also functioned as a ritual tool. Omens, incantations, and dream interpretations were housed beside administrative texts. One could consult the stars and the gods in the same room. Did the library serve as a spiritual engine for the empire? its pulse hidden behind walls of clay and script. And what about the fire? While the destruction of Nineveh was brutal, the burning of the library is both tragedy and paradox. Had it not been for the flames, the tablets might never have survived the passage of time. Their temporary incineration made them permanent. But the fire also scattered knowledge, broke tablets, melted context, burned away wooden cataloging systems. Today, much of the library is a puzzle of fragments. Could the full library be reconstructed? Ongoing efforts by the British Museum and other institutions have reassembled many texts, but thousands remain only partially translated. Some tablets hint at sciences and philosophies lost to modern understanding. Texts on metallurgy, alchemy, and cosmology. Were these remnants of earlier, deeper knowledge, or simply the thoughts of a distant empire, distorted by time? More intriguing still are the gaps. Missing volumes, incomplete records, references to books that no longer exist. Some believe entire sections of the library have yet to be discovered, still buried beneath the ruins. Others point to the possibility that duplicate collections were stored elsewhere, perhaps in Nippur or even Babylon, waiting to be found. Could there still be tablets in the earth, untouched since the days of Ashurbanipal? And if so, what might they reveal? As we look back on this ancient library, we're reminded of the fragility of knowledge, of how easily it can be lost, not just through fire or conquest, but through neglect. And yet, something about the library of Ashurbanipal endured. Through war, ruin, looting, and sandstorms, the tablets survived. They speak in silence now, from museum shelves and digital scans. Their wedge-shaped marks remain stubborn, delicate echoes of voices long gone. But the mystery persists. Was the library merely a record of what was known? Or was it a vault for what was feared to be forgotten? What truths were gathered by the king who could read? And how many still lie buried, beneath dust, beneath stone, waiting for the right hands to lift them back into the light? From the blackened tablets of Ashurbanipal's library, etched with the wisdom of fallen empires, we step even further back in time. Past the age of writing, past the first cities, into a world of stone, earth, and ritual. A time when memory was preserved not in words, but in faces. Buried beneath the dry hills just outside modern-day Amman, Jordan, lies the Neolithic site of Ain Ghazal, a settlement over 9,000 years old. Long before the pyramids, long before Sumer, people lived here in mud brick homes, cultivating crops, herding animals, and shaping the landscape with intention. But what they left behind beneath the floors of their houses has puzzled and fascinated archaeologists since their first discovery in the 1980s. Dozens of human figures, some standing, others kneeling, made of lime plaster and reeds, their surfaces smooth and pale, their eyes wide and black with bitumen. Statues nearly life-sized, buried in pits, sealed beneath layers of soil. And what draws us most are their faces. They wear masks. Flat, expressionless, almost alien in their simplicity. The features are stylized: thin lips, narrow noses, oversized eyes, blank stares. Some statues are dual-headed, some appear androgynous, and all of them radiate the same serene, unreadable presence, as though meant to represent not individuals, but archetypes, or ancestors, or something else. Who were they? Were they deities, gods sculpted by early human hands in reverence or fear? Were they representations of the dead, preserved in image long after the body was gone? Or were they masks not just of the face, but of identity itself, shields between this world and another? Mainstream archaeology suggests the statues may have been part of an ancestor cult, created for ritual purposes, then deliberately buried after use. Similar traditions have been found across the ancient Near East, where skulls of the deceased were plastered and painted, preserved in shrines or beneath homes. But the statues of Ain Ghazal go far beyond decoration. They are whole bodies, sculpted with effort, care, and purpose, and they were never meant to be seen for long. Each statue was made from a fragile material, a mixture of lime plaster over a core of bundled reeds. Once complete, they were not displayed in public spaces. Instead, they were buried, hidden in specially dug pits, often in groups. Some sets include children, adults, and ambiguous figures side by side, suggesting a narrative we no longer understand. Why create such lifelike forms only to enter them immediately? Were they part of a sacred ritual, a cycle of birth, death, and renewal? Or did they represent something even more abstract? Spirits, archetypes, or mythic ancestors whose presence had to be invited and then returned to the earth? No written language remains from this time to guide interpretation. No myths, no legends, only the statues themselves and the careful manner of their burial. Some scholars have noted that the figures lack genitalia, blurring gender and individual identity. Others see in the dual-headed statues a symbolic dualism, perhaps life and death, light and dark, or body and spirit. The faces, especially the masks, remain the most haunting detail. They are neither smiling nor grim. They don't seem to emote in any familiar way. And yet, they watch, intently, patiently. They seem to wait. Are these the earliest portraits in human history? Or are they not portraits at all, but vessels? Could the masks represent a transformation? A passage between human and divine? Between personhood and something beyond? The people of Ain Ghazal lived at a pivotal time in human development, when nomadic life was giving way to permanent settlement, when agriculture reshaped the landscape, and when spiritual life began to take on more complex symbolic forms. In such a context, these statues may have been an early attempt to understand what it meant to be human. To embody the intangible, to give form to that which cannot be seen. But we can only speculate. The site itself continues to yield discoveries. Beneath homes and communal spaces, more statues and figurines have been found, each buried deliberately. Some suggest there may have been a designated sculpting space, a kind of sacred workshop, a place where clay and reed were infused with meaning. And yet, like so many Neolithic sites, much of Ain Ghazal has already been lost. Urban expansion has covered large portions of the ancient settlement. What remains is fragile, carefully preserved in museums and under excavation shelters. And the deeper meanings behind the statues, the rituals, the stories, the beliefs, remain out of reach. Still, they speak, not in language, but in form. They invite us to imagine a world without writing, where understanding was transmitted through gesture, symbol, and ceremony. A world where the face was not just a reflection of the self, but a bridge to something greater. So we are left with these questions. Were these masked statues offerings, memories, warnings? Were they representations of gods, or the very first mirrors of ourselves? And why, after shaping them with such care, were they buried as if to sleep forever? Perhaps the people of Ain Ghazal believed that some things must not be left above ground, that there is power in concealment, that memory, like the face behind a mask, sometimes reveals more in silence than in speech. Whatever their purpose, the statues remain, still, watchful, and, in their mystery, more alive than ever. From the quiet stairs of Ain Ghazal's masked statues, faces frozen in mystery, buried beneath the Neolithic soil, we now journey to the high, dry plateaus of South America. A land etched with ancient lines, steeped in myth, and home to one of archaeology's most peculiar enigmas, the elongated skulls of Peru. scattered across burial sites from the coastal deserts of Paracas to the highlands of Cusco and the Sacred Valley beyond. These human skulls are unlike any others. They are unnaturally long, sloped at the back, stretched backward into dramatic cones, sometimes almost double the cranial volume of an average skull. And yet, these are not modern fabrications. They are real. Thousands of them have been unearthed, dating as far back as 2000 BC, preserved in the dry soil and burial chambers of pre-Incan civilizations. At first glance, the effect is startling, almost alien in appearance. Hollow sockets beneath exaggerated foreheads, cheekbones cast in shadow beneath the sloping dome of bone. And while some may initially resemble deformity or even fantasy, they speak to a deeply rooted tradition. A cultural practice passed from generation to generation. The process is known as cranial modification, or intentional cranial deformation. It involves binding an infant's head with cloth or wood during the earliest months of life, when the bones are still soft and pliable. Over time, the skull reshapes, taking on elongated or flattened forms, depending on the desired effect. This practice was not unique to Peru. Variations of cranial modification have been found across the globe, from ancient Egypt to the Huns of Central Asia, from the Pacific Islands to the tribes of North America. But in the Andean region, it reached an unparalleled level of consistency and complexity. Why? What did the people of ancient Peru see in this elongated form? Was it a symbol of beauty, status, divinity? In Paracas, one of the earliest and most famous sites for elongated skulls, the burials often show signs of high social standing. Elaborate textiles, fine pottery, and well-constructed tombs surround the bodies. This suggests the practice may have denoted elite status, perhaps even priesthood or royalty. In some cases, entire family lines appear to have passed the tradition down, their children shaped not just by blood, but by design. Yet the story doesn't end with cultural custom. Some of the skulls from Paracas present anomalies that have fueled deeper curiosity. Unusually large cranial capacity, a lack of the sagittal suture, a joint that typically separates the two parietal bones of the human skull, thicker bone density, features that some claim cannot be explained by binding alone. While most researchers maintain that these differences fall within the range of natural variation, others wonder, could there have been another reason behind the modification? Was the shape meant to imitate something seen or remembered? Fringe theorists have suggested that the elongation was an attempt to emulate gods, sky beings, or ancestral figures from a distant past. Others go further still, proposing that the earliest elongated skulls may not have been artificially modified at all, but rather indicative of a now extinct hominid lineage or a forgotten race. Mainstream archaeology strongly disagrees with these claims. DNA analysis from Paracas remains shows them to be fully human, with genetic markers consistent with ancient Andean populations. The practice, in their view, was cultural, not biological. But the question lingers. Why would multiple, geographically isolated cultures around the world engage in the same practice? What made the elongated head so universally meaningful? In Peru, the form was carefully curated, not accidental, not random. There were styles, flat, conical, annular. Some were accompanied by facial tattooing, others by jewelry inserted into the ears or nose. These weren't just people, they were portraits of identity, of belonging, and perhaps of transformation. To reshape a child's skull is to literally shape the way they appear to the world. It's an irreversible statement, one that declares, this person is different, chosen, set apart. Could the elongated skulls have marked the boundary between the sacred and the profane? Between ruler and ruled? Or between the earthly and the divine? Archaeological findings show that the practice eventually faded. By the time of the Inca Empire, cranial modification was far less common, and later still, it disappeared entirely. Banned by Spanish colonizers who saw it as pagan and unnatural. Today, many of the elongated skulls rest in museum collections across Peru. Others are locked away in archives, still awaiting full study. And despite decades of research, there is no consensus, only a trail of questions that grows longer the more we follow it. What did it mean to carry such a head? To live a life shaped from birth by the hands of others? To wear your lineage, your class, your myth, within your very bones? The desert air of Paracas remains still, the stone tombs remain silent, but the skulls endure. And they ask us, quietly, persistently, not just how this was done, but why. What dream, what belief, what ancient vision led entire civilizations to sculpt their very identities into something beyond the ordinary? And what part of that vision have we lost? From the high deserts of Peru, where elongated skulls whisper of identity and ancient ritual, we now travel deep into a world far older. A place where stone is not carved into monuments, but painted with memory. Where the jungle breathes with the rhythm of a forgotten past, and silence holds its own stories. This is Borneo. In the limestone caves of the Indonesian portion of the island, shielded by dense forest and thick mist, lies a prehistoric gallery unlike any other. Known as the Lubang Jereji Saleh Cave, it contains some of the oldest known hand stencils ever discovered, ghostly outlines left by human beings more than 40,000 years ago. The image is deceptively simple. A hand, pressed flat against the cave wall. Red pigment blown around it, leaving behind a negative imprint. Delicate, unmistakable, human. But this is no modern graffiti. Radiocarbon dating of the mineral deposits layered atop the pigment places the handprint to at least 39,900 BC, possibly older. That makes it among the oldest known artworks on Earth, older than the cave paintings of Lascaux in France, older than the famous hand stencils in Spain's El Castillo cave. And it raises a profound question. What compelled a person so long ago to mark their presence here? There are no names, no dates, no records, just the outline of a hand. A symbol of presence, of touch, of existence. It is not decorative, it is declarative. I was here. Who was this person? What did they see when they looked at the cave wall? Did they know their handprint would outlive them by millennia? The hand stencil is not alone. Nearby, other stencils appear, overlapping, varying in size and pigment. Some are faint, almost lost to the damp air and time's slow erosion. Alongside them are depictions of animals, warty pigs, cattle-like creatures, and scenes that suggest hunting or ritual movement. In one striking panel, a reddish-orange animal appears mid-stride, rendered with a grace that defies its age. It is estimated to be over 45,000 years old, possibly the oldest narrative scene ever painted. But the hand remains the most haunting. Mainstream archaeology interprets these stencils as part of early symbolic behavior, a reflection of cognitive evolution, the emergence of abstract thought and artistic expression. A sign that Homo sapiens, already dispersed across the islands of Southeast Asia, were developing the same symbolic systems as their distant cousins in Europe and Africa. And yet, there's something more here, something that resists simple categorization. Why a hand? Why not a drawing of the body or the face? Why not tools or animals alone? Perhaps the answer lies not in what the hand represents, but in what it does. The hand reaches, touches, creates. It is the tool through which humans shape their world and communicate without words. By placing their hand on the wall, the artist, if we can call them that, was doing more than decorating. They were claiming. anchoring themselves to a specific place in time and space, forming a bridge between the self and the environment. A moment frozen in ochre and stone. Some researchers suggest these stencils may have held ritual significance, part of initiation rites or spiritual ceremonies. The act of leaving one's mark might have been a rite of passage, a way to connect with ancestors or invoke protection from unseen forces. Others wonder if the hands were offerings, prayers left in pigment, symbols of survival in an uncertain world. In certain indigenous traditions today, similar acts endure. Hands pressed in paint onto rock. Not for art, but for communion. With land, with spirit, with the unbroken line of ancestry. Could the people of Borneo, so long ago, have shared that instinct? And then, there is the silence. For tens of thousands of years, these prints lay undisturbed, hidden behind forest and stone. The person who left them could never have imagined a future where strangers from across the globe would gaze upon their mark, trying to understand what it meant. That gap between intent and interpretation is where mystery lingers. What stories were told in these caves beneath flickering torchlight? What memories were painted before memory itself had a written form? The jungle around the caves remains thick and largely unexplored. Other chambers may still lie hidden, their walls untouched since the Ice Age. If there are more prints, more scenes, what might they show? A birth, a hunt, a death, a vision? What if these images are not just signs of art, but signs of something deeper? A worldview, a cosmology, a language not of words, but of forms. We often look at these markings and see the past. But what if they were looking forward, through pigment and stone, to us? The handprint in Borneo is not a relic. It is a presence, one that asks no question, and yet inspires many. Who left it? Why here? And what did they hope would remain? In a world that changes endlessly, this quiet gesture, this ancient silhouette of a hand, endures. And perhaps, in that endurance, it tells us something we've forgotten. That long before history, before cities and kings and writing, someone paused, pressed their hand to stone, and chose to be remembered. From a handprint on a cave wall in Borneo, one of the earliest expressions of human presence, we now shift forward in time and across continents to the tiled floors and stone walls of a Roman outpost on the Adriatic coast. A place where art, science, and empire converged, and where, in a quiet corner of a ruined house, something remarkable was left behind. A surgeon's toolkit. It was discovered in the House of the Surgeon, an excavated structure in the ancient Roman city of Rimini, Italy. Buried beneath layers of debris and ash, this small room once belonged to a man of uncommon skill. Inside, archaeologists unearthed over 150 delicate instruments, some of them eerily similar to tools found in modern hospitals. Bronze scalpels with replaceable blades, bone levers, forceps, catheters, needles, probes, hooks, a speculum, even a small cupping vessel for drawing blood or extracting toxins. Every item was precisely crafted, carefully designed. Tools not of war, but of healing. And they raise a simple, yet profound question. How advanced was Roman medicine, really? For centuries, the image of Roman healthcare has been shaped by battlefield surgery, crude herbal remedies, and bleeding rituals. But the discovery of this toolkit suggests something far more refined, more clinical, more methodical. A world where anatomy was studied, procedures were standardized, and healing was an art guided by observation. The instruments themselves are intricate. Some are hinged, others notched or ridged for grip. The scalpels in particular show signs of interchangeable parts, evidence of modular design. These are not the improvisations of a desperate healer, but the tools of a trained professional, confident in his work. Who was he? We don't know his name. No inscription identifies him. But the location of the house, near the center of town, adjacent to a forum, suggests status. He was not a traveling medic or a battlefield attendant. He was a physician with a practice, perhaps with clients from the elite. His toolkit was his livelihood. And when disaster struck, perhaps fire, flood, or sudden evacuation, he left it behind. Or did he? Was the kit hidden intentionally, buried for safekeeping, or simply forgotten, sealed away by time? What we do know is that Roman medicine drew from a wide body of knowledge: Greek, Egyptian, and earlier Mesopotamian traditions. Figures like Galen and Hippocrates left treatises on the humors, on surgery, on diet and disease. But beneath those lofty texts were the daily practices of men like the one who owned this toolkit. Quiet surgeons whose work never made it into history books, but whose tools now speak for them. The Romans understood antisepsis in rudimentary form. They boiled instruments, used wine as disinfectant. They cauterized wounds and amputated limbs. Some procedures, like cataract surgery or trepanation, were performed with surprising precision. Patients were given herbal sedatives or opium-based mixtures to dull pain. Bones were set, bladders drained, tumors excised, and all of it with tools like these. But what's most fascinating is how little some of these instruments have changed. A Roman bone lever, laid beside a modern one, is nearly identical. The same with surgical hooks and clamps. The understanding of anatomy, though primitive by today's standards, was practical enough to guide delicate operations. So where did this knowledge come from? Some say it was trial and error, centuries of accumulated experience, passed from mentor to apprentice. Others argue that a deeper, perhaps lost tradition of anatomical study once flourished, only to be suppressed or forgotten with the fall of the empire. And still others wonder, could Roman medicine have been more advanced than we assume? Could there have been procedures or insights lost to time, hidden in texts that didn't survive, or buried with doctors whose stories were never written? Fragments of ancient medical manuals hint at specialized knowledge: wound classifications, surgical case studies, descriptions of internal organs with surprising accuracy. The remains of hospitals, valetudinaria, within military forts suggest organized healthcare systems. Inscriptions and epitaphs speak of doctors skilled in opening the body and relieving suffering. Yet so much remains uncertain. Did these surgeons operate with genuine understanding, or were they guided more by experience than theory? Were these tools used to save lives, or merely prolong them under pain? And what of the surgeon himself? Was he celebrated, feared, revered? In ancient Rome, medicine held a strange position: respected, but not always trusted. Physicians were sometimes slaves, sometimes elites. Their success could earn them praise or suspicion. In the house of the surgeon, all that remains is the quiet order of the tools, lined and boxed, waiting. Perhaps he left in haste, meaning to return. Perhaps he died, and no one knew what he had left behind. Or perhaps he had already passed into myth, his name fading, while his instruments endured. Today, these objects rest in museums, cleaned, catalogued, displayed under glass, but they still carry the weight of human contact, of touch, of blood, of healing. They remind us that the body was always a mystery, even to those who dared to open it. And they invite us to ask, what did Roman doctors know that we've forgotten? What cures, what ideas, what knowledge was buried with them? And in the silence of their tools, silent, sharp, and strangely familiar, what stories still wait to be uncovered? From the cold precision of the Roman surgeon's instruments, silent witnesses to the inner workings of life and death, we move just a few hundred kilometers south. And yet, it feels like a world apart. To a city once vibrant with sound and color, frozen in time by catastrophe, where daily life, ordinary and extraordinary, was captured in an instant beneath layers of ash. This is Pompeii. A city stopped mid-breath in 79 AD, when the eruption of Mount Vesuvius smothered its streets, its people, and its secrets beneath a pyroclastic shroud. But what survived was not just architecture or skeletons. It was glimpses, startlingly vivid, of Roman life as it was lived. And among the frescoes and mosaics uncovered over the years, one image has recently stirred quiet curiosity. A painting, small, precise, and at its center, something familiar. A round flatbread, golden and garnished, resting on a silver tray. Around it, fruits, a pomegranate, a glass of wine. The composition is balanced, almost photographic. A still life, rendered with exquisite care. And what immediately caught the attention of modern eyes was this. It looks like a pizza. This fresco was uncovered in 2023 in a domus near the ancient city's central intersection, a structure likely belonging to a wealthy merchant. The wall on which it was painted was part of a food-serving area, perhaps once a dining room or reception space. And while Romans did not have tomatoes or mozzarella or ovens that baked the way ours do, the image resonates. A circle of bread, garnished, served as a centerpiece. But is it pizza? The answer depends on what we mean by that word. The ancient Romans certainly consumed flatbreads, round loaves baked on stones, often topped with herbs, oil, and sometimes cheese or preserved vegetables. In the satirical poetry of Horace, we find references to libum and placenta, baked doughs used in both religious offerings and casual meals. In the streets of Pompeii, fast food stalls known as thermopolia sold warm breads with various accompaniments, including olives, onions, and fermented fish sauces. So, while this fresco predates the invention of the modern Neapolitan pizza by nearly 1,800 years, it's not wrong to see a distant culinary ancestor here. But why paint it? Still life imagery, what the Romans called xenia, or hospitality scenes, was a common theme in domestic decoration. These paintings often showed bountiful trays of food, wine, and offerings, signaling abundance and generosity. But they were also symbolic, evoking themes of mortality, transience, and the pleasures of the senses. To eat was to live. To host was to be human. To serve a meal was to offer something of oneself. Could this painting then have been more than decoration? A coded message about generosity? Or perhaps an emblem of status, declaring the householder's access to fine ingredients, silverware, imported wine? Or could it have been something simpler still? An attempt to preserve the beauty of a moment, to honor the mundane. In many ways, that is what Pompeii gives us. Not just stories of emperors and armies, but of bakers and diners, of children and kitchens, of bread on a plate. And yet, as with all things Pompeian, there is always more beneath the surface. Why was this particular food item chosen for depiction? Its simplicity is striking. It lacks the extravagance of some other Xenia frescoes. No roast meats, no overflowing platters. Just a circle of bread, humble but central. Was it a regional specialty? A family favorite? A dish passed down through generations? Could it have held ceremonial significance, perhaps tied to household rituals, ancestral offerings, or seasonal feasts? Or is its power precisely in its ordinariness? A reminder that what matters most often lies in the everyday. That something as simple as bread, painted with care and preserved by disaster, can speak across millennia. And what of the unknown artist, whose hand applied pigment to plaster 2,000 years ago? What did they see when they painted it? A meal? A symbol? A message? Or did they simply seek to honor the world they lived in, one plate at a time? Today, the so-called Pompeii pizza painting sits under protective glass, admired by scholars and tourists alike. It has become a point of fascination, bridging the ancient and the modern in a single, quiet image. Not through monuments or myths, but through food, the most human of languages. And yet, the painting resists full translation. Like so much of Pompeii, it invites us in, then steps back, leaving space for wonder. Was this the world's first pizza? Or was it something more elusive? An echo of a moment, lost in ash, found again in fragments. Perhaps the deeper truth is not in the meal itself, but in the hand that painted it, the wall that bore it, and the city that, even in destruction, refused to be forgotten. From the quiet, still life preserved on a Pompeian wall, where a round loaf of bread becomes a symbol of hospitality and memory, we now travel far from the stone forums of Rome, far even from the cities of the ancient world. South, across oceans and continents, to the windswept plateaus of Patagonia, at the edge of the known world. Here, among barren cliffs and shifting light, is a cave unlike any other. La Cueva de las Manos, the cave of the painted hands. Tucked into a steep canyon along the Pinturas River in southern Argentina, this remote rock shelter hides a gallery that dates back over 9,000 years. The name says it all. Its walls are covered, layer upon layer, with human handprints. Hundreds of them. Red, black, white, ochre. Mostly left hands, mostly small, as though painted by young people, or women. Or perhaps by all. Children, elders, generations. The first time you see it, it's unsettling. Not because it's grotesque or violent, but because it's personal. These are not symbolic figures, not stylized gods or animals. These are human presences, unmistakable and immediate. Not drawn, not imagined, pressed. Archaeologists believe the prints were made by blowing pigment through a hollow reed or bone tube, using the hand as a stencil. The result is a negative image, an absence made visible, a silent declaration, a gesture that echoes across time. But what did it mean? Was it a ritual of coming of age, a rite of passage, a way to mark territory, ancestry, belonging? Or were these prints a kind of communication, names without words, signatures written in dust and breath? The cave doesn't offer easy answers. Alongside the handprints are depictions of guanacos, graceful camel-like animals native to the region, along with hunting scenes, zigzags, and abstract shapes. These are older than the handprints, suggesting the cave's function evolved over time. Perhaps it was once a hunting shrine, then a gathering place, then something more sacred still. Even now, standing inside the cave, surrounded by dozens of overlapping hands, there's a strange feeling. Not that you are looking at the past, but that the past is looking at you. Who were these people? They lived before metal, before agriculture, before the great civilizations of the Andes. They were hunter-gatherers, surviving in one of the most isolated and unforgiving landscapes on Earth. And yet, they created something enduring, something that still pulses with human intention. Archaeological studies have dated the earliest handprints to around 7,300 BC, with newer layers added over centuries. Some suggest the cave was used for over 3,000 years. That's longer than most civilizations last. Entire belief systems came and went. Yet here, in this cave, the hands kept appearing. Why? What drew people back? Was it a sacred place, a site of memory, a cosmic threshold? The repetition of the image, the hand, always the hand, suggests it meant more than mere decoration. It was a symbol, yes, but also a ritual, a performance of identity, of connection, and perhaps of longing. Many of the hands show signs of physical difference, missing fingers, bent joints. Some interpret this as injury, others as gesture, a code, a language. Were certain finger positions meant to signal clan, rank, or story? Or were they simply the marks of people who lived hard lives? Mainstream archaeology has theories. The cave may have been a site of shamanic ritual, a place to commune with ancestors or spirits. The hands may have been a way to assert continuity, to say, I am part of this land, and this land is part of me. But the cave resists final interpretation. Like the oldest myths, its truth lies not in fact, but in atmosphere, in the stillness between ideas. And perhaps that's the point. The cave of the painted hands is not about what we know, it's about what we remember, and what we choose to leave behind. To press a hand against a stone wall and surround it with pigment is to declare existence, not loudly, not boastfully, but quietly, permanently. There is no ego in these hands, no vanity, just presence, a moment, a breath, a decision to endure. And that leaves us with questions that science can't fully answer. Were these hands reaching forward or reaching back? Were they calling the spirits of the land, or were they trying to speak to us? What would it mean to add one more hand? To place your palm next to theirs and feel, even for a moment, that across 9,000 years, someone once stood where you now stand, and chose to be remembered. The cave offers no reply, only silence and hands, waiting. From the windswept cave walls of Patagonia, where hands reach out to us from the edge of prehistory, we now travel north, to a land of long twilight, black soil, and silent stones. A place where the past does not rise in ruins, but lies buried, waiting, beneath fields that seem empty. This is Gjellestad, in southeastern Norway, a patch of farmland near the Oslo Fjord, where for centuries nothing remarkable had been seen. Just grass, tilled earth, and the passing of seasons. Until, in 2018, a ground-penetrating radar survey revealed something extraordinary. A ship. Long, elegant, hidden beneath just half a meter of soil. It was not the remains of a harbor or a coastal wreck. This vessel was deliberately buried inland, beneath a mound that had since eroded away. A Viking ship, placed beneath the earth over 1,000 years ago, not to sail seas, but to ferry someone into the afterlife. Roughly 65 feet in length, its outline emerged from the radar scans with eerie clarity. The central keel, the ribs, the tapering ends. All of it preserved in shadow, invisible from above, yet unmistakable. It was a burial, the kind reserved for nobility, or someone of profound significance. Who was laid to rest inside? That remains unknown. No body has yet been found. But the ship was accompanied by traces of longhouses, feasting halls, and other burial mounds, suggesting this was once a sacred site, a Viking Age complex of power, ritual, and memory. What kind of person was granted a ship for a tomb? In Viking culture, such burials were rare, reserved for kings, chieftains, or warriors of high esteem. And yet, these ships were more than just symbols of status. They were metaphors for life, for death, and for the voyage between the two. To be buried in a ship was to continue the journey, to cross into the unknown with dignity, with purpose, with honor. The ship beneath the Gjellestad field speaks to that belief. It is not merely a grave, it is a declaration. And yet, this one lay hidden for over a millennium. Why? Was it forgotten, concealed, or simply consumed by time and weather? We know that many Viking burial mounds were destroyed during Christianization, flattened, reused, or quietly erased. Could this have been part of that sweeping shift, a memory intentionally buried? Archaeologists moved quickly. By 2020, a full excavation was underway. What they found beneath the soil was delicate, partially decayed wood, iron rivets, outlines of structure. The ship had suffered from rot, but its shape endured, impressed into the soil like a negative image. A ghost, iron nails, a possible grave chamber, fragments of weapons and gear. But no treasure, no body. Had the grave been looted? Or was the absence itself intentional? Speculation began to grow. Could this be the grave of a Viking queen? Some burials of high-status women have included ships, weapons, and symbols of command. Or was this the resting place of a king whose name no longer survives? Perhaps a sea raider, a poet-warrior, a leader of a forgotten tribe. And if so, why here? Gjellestad is not remote, but it is quiet. Tucked inland, near the ancient roadways of the Østfold region. Close to rivers, close to trade routes. A land of transitions. Perhaps that's what drew them. To be buried not in isolation, but at the crossroads of movement and memory. The ship rests within what was once a mound, an artificial hill raised by many hands, meant to be seen from afar. These mounds were both monuments and messages. They told travelers, someone of consequence lies here. They shaped the landscape with meaning. And then, over time, they vanished. Could there be more beneath these fields? Already, radar has revealed other structures, longhouses, enclosures, outbuildings. Was this a royal estate, a ceremonial center, a place of pilgrimage or seasonal gathering? Or could it be something even older, even deeper? Some theorists have proposed that Viking burial mounds were often placed atop sites of earlier ritual significance, pre-Viking sanctuaries, Bronze Age temples, or Neolithic settlements. A layering of sacred space, one culture atop another. If so, the ship burial at Gjellestad may be only the most recent layer in a story stretching back thousands of years. And what of the ship itself? Its design is consistent with Viking-era construction. Curved prow, shallow draft, clinker-built hull. These were ships made for both rivers and sea, for exploration, trade, and conquest. Some bore warriors across the North Sea. Others brought settlers to Iceland, Greenland, even North America. But this one went nowhere, except downward, into the earth. Its final voyage not over water, but into myth. Today, the ship has been removed, conserved, studied, but its presence still haunts the field where it lay. And the questions remain. Who was buried here? Why was their story lost? And how many more ships still rest, hidden beneath quiet ground, mute testaments to lives once lived at the edge of the known world? The field is still. The sky is wide. And beneath the soil, history waits, not lost, but sleeping. Waiting for the right hands, the right eyes, to find it again. From the green pastures of Norway, where a Viking ship once slumbered beneath the earth, we now move to the sun-soaked jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula. Here, vines twist through limestone ruins, and beneath the dense canopy, the past rises, not as a whisper, but as a song. This is Chichen Itza, one of the most celebrated and enigmatic cities of the ancient Maya. Its towering step pyramid, known as El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan, stands at the heart of the complex. With 4 sides of 91 steps each, plus a single top platform, the pyramid contains 365 steps in total, mirroring the solar calendar. Built between the 8th and 12th centuries AD, it reflects both architectural genius and cosmic symbolism. But there's more to this pyramid than its visual majesty. There is a sound, a phenomenon not carved into stone, but woven into the air itself. If you stand at the base of the staircase and clap your hands, a short, sharp sound, the echo that returns is unexpected. It does not mimic the original clap. Instead, it chirps, a descending tone, almost bird-like, ringing through the plaza like a hidden voice. Researchers and visitors alike have described the echo as resembling the call of the resplendent Quetzal, a sacred bird in Mesoamerican mythology. Its feathers adorned royalty, its image symbolized the gods, and its song, rare, elusive, was believed to carry divine resonance. But how is it possible that stone steps, placed centuries ago without modern technology, can mimic a bird's call so precisely? Some argue it's intentional, that the Maya, masters of astronomy and mathematics, were also deeply attuned to acoustics. The design of El Castillo, with its steep staircases, broad landings, and narrow corridors, could act like a sound filter, modifying and shaping echoes in specific ways. But if true, that would mean the Maya weren't just building to the sky. They were composing for the air. Did they test acoustics as they built, adjusting the angles and spacing to achieve the perfect echo? Did priests use this effect during rituals, clapping or speaking, so the voice of Kukulkan would seem to answer from above? Or could the sound have had a practical function, announcing processions, signaling events, directing crowds? Some archaeologists remain cautious. They point out that echo patterns may be coincidental, the byproduct of geometry and material. That many ancient structures produce strange echoes, and only in retrospect are they assigned meaning. After all, limestone is a natural sound reflector, and steps, by nature, create wave interference. But then again, the Maya were not accidental builders. From the alignment of pyramids to solstices, to the precise orientation of ball courts to cardinal directions, their cities were designed with purpose. And in a culture where sound, vision, and myth were inseparable, the idea of architectural acoustics is not far-fetched, especially when one considers that Chichen Itza's acoustics don't stop with El Castillo. At the Great Ball Court, a whisper from one end can be heard clearly at the other, over 500 feet away. Shouted speech bounces off the curved walls and echoes multiple times. Could these sounds have amplified ritual speeches, or created a heightened sensory experience for those in attendance? And if the ball court speaks, and the pyramid sings, what else in Chichen Itza listens? Could other buildings, now ruined or overgrown, have contained their own acoustic signatures? Did priests, astronomers, and rulers understand the power of sound in ritual space? More intriguingly, did the people believe that the gods themselves spoke through echo? The Temple of Kukulkan was associated with descent, especially during the equinox, when sunlight casts a serpent-like shadow down the pyramid's northern balustrade. On these days, as the serpent of light slithers downward, the sound of the chirping Quetzal might also have been summoned. Light and sound together, announcing the return of the god. A spectacle not just for the eyes, but for the soul. Yet the mystery remains. How did the Maya discover this effect? Was it trial and error, a moment of inspiration, or part of a larger, now lost body of knowledge, one that fused architecture with music, religion with resonance? Some fringe theorists have suggested even more speculative ideas, that the pyramid was used in altered state rituals, where sound played a role in spiritual transport, that the echo was perceived as a voice from the underworld, or the sky, or that the temple encoded not just time and space, but vibration. Mainstream scholars remain grounded in evidence, but they agree on one thing: the chirping echo is real, measurable, reproducible, and profoundly strange. What it meant, though, what it was, we may never fully know. And perhaps that's what gives it power. To stand at the base of the Temple of Kukulkan, surrounded by jungle and stone, and hear a bird's song echo from stonework laid 1,000 years ago, is to be reminded that the past was not silent. It spoke, it sang, it echoed. And somewhere, Between architecture and atmosphere, between science and spirit, the voice of the Maya still lingers. What else did they build into their world, not to be seen, but to be heard? From the echoes of Chichen Itza, where stone sings with the voice of a sacred bird, we descend into a different kind of silence. A silence not shaped by architecture or air, but by the stillness of a human skull. Cracked, cut, healed, and inlaid with gold. This is not myth, it is archaeology. In the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, and across regions once touched by the great Andean civilizations, the Inca, the Wari, the Tiwanaku, archaeologists have uncovered something remarkable and unsettling. Human skulls, dating back hundreds and even thousands of years, show unmistakable signs of ancient brain surgery. The procedure is called trepanation, the deliberate removal of a piece of the skull, exposing the brain beneath. But among these finds, a few are different. In some, the trepanned area isn't simply left open or covered by scar tissue. Instead, it is capped with thin sheets of gold. Thin, malleable, shaped to the wound, like